Chapter 112. The moment the blood was spilled out, Su Jingyuan felt his body relax. Half of the withering sword intent was still wreaking havoc in his body, but it was unable to trap the energy within his body. His left arm, although still dry, wasn't as dead as before. Instead, it was brimming with life. His vital energy was flowing smoothly. On the other hand, all the weeds within 1,000 feet to the left withered in an instant. Then, they regained their vitality and grew again, turning green. In a short dozen breaths, it went through several withering cycles. In the end, it totally withered, with no signs of life left. Su Jingyuan only felt a wave of joy, like the giant rock on his back that had been pressing down on him for decades had finally been moved away. However, his body still couldn't move. He could already control the true qi in his body, but who knows what Zhong Shou did to cause him to be unable to even raise his arm. He could only stay on the spot and listen to what Zhong Shou said. This senior who used the meridian yin-yang technique shouldn't have any bad intentions. He was just prepared to punish you and teach you a lesson. This withering sword intent was supposed to dissipate after 3 years, leaving behind the meridian yin-yang energy, which could help you enter the Earth Meridian's 7th chakra realm. Maybe something happened to you while you were cultivating, or maybe you were too eager to get rid of the sword intent, causing it to be unable to dissipate and remain in your body. When Su Jingyuan heard that, he was startled once more. Although he didn't know whether or not those words were true, a bitter smile appeared on his face. He had been tortured by this so-called withering sword intent for an entire few tens of years. So it turned out that he was reaping what he had sown? However, the one who was more shocked was the half-monster teen in front of him. At this moment, even a fool could see that Zhong Shou didn't have any bad intentions towards him. He really wanted to help him get rid of the sword intent, and he had already done so. Thinking back to what he had done before, Su Jingyuan's face couldn't help but turn red. This person was so capable, no wonder Sir Lei Dong paid so much attention to him. He could only laugh at himself for making so many guesses. He even thought that Sir Lei Dong had randomly sent this teen to his Cloud Saint City. He obviously wanted him to try his best to befriend him. With this young man's ability to easily control the sword intent of others, why would he need the protection of the Cloud Saint City? Zhong Shou was too lazy to care about his feelings. He casually explained a few words, pulled out the gold needles, and turned to leave. His tone was still indifferent as he said, "Actually, more than half of the withering glory sword intent still remains. Unfortunately, my cultivation is not enough to help the City Lord get rid of it completely. I can only help the City Lord recover your left arm. If the City Lord were to meet another heaven-ranked expert in the future, he should be able to expel them smoothly. I have offended you just now, please don't take it to heart. Goodbye." Actually, if he spent a little more effort and a few more months, it really wouldn't be that difficult. However, he did not have a deep relationship with this person, so there was no need for him to waste his time on Su Jingyuan. He didn't want any of those gifts and just boarded the carriage on his own. There was no need for him to urge him. Chu Shui giggled and waved her whip again, urging the 18 cloud-treading foals to gallop forward. Smoke and dust filled the air, covering all the people behind him. By the time the dust settled, the cloud-crossing carriage was already more than 300 meters away. Lianqing's body had recovered some strength, and he could move his 4 limbs. His face flushed red as he knelt down in front of Su Jingyuan. "I am useless. I have eyes but no pupils, unable to see a true god. I actually made the master misjudge, and nearly missed it." As he said that, Lianqing's forehead was covered in sweat. If it was just missing a chance to get to know a future top expert, then it was okay. However, when he thought about how if he missed out on this day, Su Jingyuan might not have any hope of recovering his injuries for the rest of his life, Lianqing felt his chest go numb, his heart palpitating. Luckily, he was blessed, and the master decided to come out of the city to send the Gantian mountain prince off. If not, the outcome would be unimaginable. Su Jingyuan's energy cultivation was really high, and he had recovered long before Lianqing. He just looked at the carriage in the distance. When he heard that, he gave out a sad smile, waving his hand. This matter has nothing to do with you. This prince really hides deeply, even I can't see any signs. It would be weird if you could notice anything unusual. Lianqing's face flushed red, not willing to get up. Su Jingyuan didn't try to persuade him, continuing to look at the carriage. What is the relationship between that prince and the Lingyun sect? He can actually use the cloud-shocking god-destroying sword intent. Moreover, his sword intent could change. Who knew what level his sword Dao had reached? I heard that to be able to control the sword intent of others, one has to reach the peak of sword intent. However, with his age, how is that possible? I don't understand. This prince obviously has no opponent below the martial ancestor level. Why does he have to hide his abilities so well? As he said that, he gave out a gloating smile. Zhong Weiran started from nothing and rose up in Donglin Cloud Continent. How can such a tiger father have such a useless son? Sigh, those people who have bad intentions for the Gantian Mountain Monster King position are just like dogs and chickens in the eyes of this prince. He doesn't care about them at all. Lianqing also agreed. Thinking back to that short exchange just now, he still felt terrified. If that prince wanted to kill him, he could have taken his life in a breath. Even Su Jingyuan, who was a martial ancestor expert, was caught off guard and restrained. With such strength, he could return with the strength his father left behind. In just a few days, he could control Gantian Mountain. His heart suddenly moved, and he was in deep thought. The Prince Zhong Shou is really talented, unparalleled in the world, but he wants to hide it so well. However, looking at those people in Gantian Mountain, there aren't many of them. To be able to make the prince so wary and bear with it, there should be another reason. Most probably. Su Jingyuan slightly nodded his head, following which he gave out a bitter laugh. If that is the case, then I owe him a huge favor. The Prince Zhong Shou hid for over 10 years, but today he made an exception for me. I am ashamed. If those old friends find out about this, they will laugh at me. Mr. Lei Dong was kind enough to help me, but I chased him out. In the end, it ended up like this. I am so ashamed. As he said that, Su Jingyuan's brows furrowed once more. After a long while, he sighed. Make a trip back to the city and prepare a huge gift. No matter what, you have to chase up. Although that prince wants to repay me for protecting him for over 10 days, I, Su Jingyuan, can't be at ease. I am ashamed to accept it. Lianqing acknowledged, but he didn't move. Sweeping around, he said, then the people nearby, deal with them all. Su Jingyuan's expression was really calm, like he was talking about something really normal, a sense of dominance hidden within. Since his left arm had recovered, why did he need to care about other people's faces? However, his eyes were filled with a faint sense of pity. This time, he had really missed out on it. He regretted that he didn't personally meet this Gantian Mountain prince. Returning to the carriage, Zhong Shou casually took out a talisman to wipe away the sweat on his body. He swallowed a pill, allowing the true qi in his body to recover slightly. This time it was really easy, just that the consumption was slightly higher. Although that Su Jingyuan was at the peak of the martial ancestor realm, there was still that withering sword intent left in his body. It was like an egg being held in his hands, unable to cause any waves. Only when he activated the cloud-shocking god-destroying sword intent and used the golden needles did he spend some effort. Chu Shui, who was in front, was smiling. Young master, you vented your anger. You should have taught those few people a lesson. Who asked them to look down on you? Zhong Shou was delighted when he heard that. Not long ago, he was thinking about casually finding someone to vent his anger on, but now he scolded. Nonsense. How can one be so shallow when dealing with matters? Is it that if a dog bites you, you bite back? If you are bullied by others, You must take revenge before you are willing to let it go? Chu Shui's anger dissipated, but she still muttered, "Then you shouldn't have helped that Cloud Saint City Lord remove that withering sword intent. Looking at them, it is better if you don't care." Zhong Shou was just acting to tease this brat. This time he frowned and shook his head, his tone becoming serious. "People give me a peach, and I repay them with wine. To me, this is just something I did casually, really simple. To him, it might be a matter of life and death, so why be stingy?" He didn't say anything more, casually taking a fruit and throwing it out of the window. It actually turned in a spiral and flew to the front. He laughed and scolded, "Brat, you are so young, but you have such a temper. Drive the carriage properly." Chu Shu cried out and said in a wrong tone, "Young master, Shui is already very stupid, you are not allowed to hit my head." In just a moment, he heard the sound of fruits being eaten, as well as a string of bell-like laughter. Zhong Shou's lips curled up as he thought back to the Cloud Saint City Lord matter. Perhaps this man of great talent and bold vision in the past was truly old. However, this could also be because he was standing in his position, which was why he saw it this way. In the eyes of others, they would only praise this Su Jingyuan for knowing the situation and protecting himself. After being disturbed by this matter, the inspiration that had appeared before had completely dissipated. Zhong Shou closed his eyes once more to comprehend, but he didn't gain anything even after a long time. His mind was in a mess, so he decided to walk to the window and look out at the scenery to calm himself down. In his field of vision, he saw smoke and dust rumbling behind him. Zhong Shoxin's heart instinctively jumped. In just a moment, he saw another carriage appear in front of him. There was no one driving it, so the horses galloped on their own. There were also 18 horses, but they were all Windrider foals. Who knows where these two people got them from? It caused this carriage to travel at an extreme speed, and in just a moment, it had already caught up. On the carriage stood a red-shirted person. Looking closely, it was Xianyuan Iren. Looking down from above, he coldly stared at them. Li Yunyang stood at the shaft of the carriage, her eyes cold. Zhong Shou couldn't help but feel his head hurt. This girl really chased over. Chapter 113. After catching up to Zhong Shou's carriage, Xianyuan Iren and Li Yunyang ran into Zhong Shou's carriage without hesitation. They didn't even bother about the carriage behind them. What was weird was that those 18 Windrider foals were all really tamed. They didn't need anyone to drive them, and they could gallop together and chase closely behind. Zhong Shoxin was really down. Only when the two of them entered did he manage to raise his spirits. "That isn't good, right? Miss Xianyuan, you are still unmarried, and being in a small room with me as your fiancé, your reputation won't be good. This matter is urgent and we can't care so much. As long as we have a clear conscience. Moreover, with Sister Yunyang here, who would say anything?" Xianyuan Iren shook her head and didn't care at all. Then she looked at Zhong Shou with anticipation. "You still haven't told me where the recipe for the Meridian Spirit Pill came from. Are there other recipes? Although the Meridian Spirit Pill has been refined to solve your dual meridian body, it is best if you find another recipe or use acupuncture or a fist technique that can stretch your meridians. Who knows, maybe the medicine encyclopedia you have seen has other clues. There isn't any in the medicine encyclopedia, I just occasionally saw some recipes." Zhong Shou felt his body had no energy. Although he was impressed in his heart that Xianyuan Iren was really smart, he wasn't willing to deal with her. However, when he saw that her face was filled with disappointment, he suddenly had an idea. He took out a brush and ink and casually wrote down a recipe. "However, there are a few similar recipes, but I don't know what they are for. One of them is called the Chill Spirit Mysterious Sense Pill. Maybe Miss Iren can use it." In the last life, he didn't know how to refine pills, but he wanted to. He remembered many recipes in the future, but didn't know how to refine any of them. It wasn't a waste to write this recipe for her as compensation for the Meridian Spirit Pill. Xianyuan Iren's eyes lit up. When Zhong Shou wrote the last line, she eagerly snatched it. Chill Spirit Mysteria Sense Pill? Ice bluegrass, perilla leaves, citrus aurantium, black bug, cold alum. The strange pill formula seemed to be extremely difficult to concoct. 2 of the herbs were completely unheard of. What was the use of this pill formula? If we don't know what it does, we won't know what kind of heat to use when refining pills. This time it wasn't the same as when he identified the Meridian Spirit Pill. Although Zhong Shou had written down all the required amounts of ingredients, he still didn't know what to do. Xianyuan Iren was still unable to confirm the use of this pill. He simply held the pill formula in his hand and muttered to himself in a daze. Seeing this, Zhong Shou regained some of his confidence. Although Xianyuan Iren's talent was strong, there was still a limit. The Chilling Spirit Profound Sense Pill was also a pill formula developed by the later generations. When consumed by those who had reached the Leaving Aperture realm, its effects were similar to the 7 Spirit Sects Snow Spirit Pill. At the same time, it could increase soul power, assist spirit cultivators in meditation, and purify the soul. However, it was 3 times more potent than the Snow Spirit Pill. However, this pill had another effect, which was to make one's entire body as cold as ice. He wrote this pill formula not only for himself but also to help Xianyuan Iren. At this moment, he couldn't directly tell Xianyuan Iren that this pill could help her cultivate the mysterious moon-wood brilliance method. At least when she cultivated, she could wear clothes and not be naked. He could only let Xianyuan Iren think about it herself. However, Zhong Shou was happy to see such a situation. As for that Li Yunyang, he was too lazy to bother about her. He decided to just lie on the soft bed and continue to think about the many martial path techniques in his memory. Anyways, he couldn't get rid of these 2 people, so he would just treat them as air. With my heaven-swallowing energy conversion technique as the foundation, it can store everything and contain everything. Isn't it compatible with my martial path that incorporates the strengths of hundreds of schools? However, it is best to remove some of the flaws. I would rather it be weaker than leave any problems. As for how to merge illusionary techniques and lightning techniques, I can also refer to the 7-tail Linghu and lightning phoenix marks in my soul ocean. With that, I am enlightened. With some ideas, Zhong Shou's thoughts flew freely. Numerous heart cultivation chants, the essence of various energy cultivation techniques, were found by him one by one before he pieced them together. Without spending much effort, a rough framework was gradually taking shape. He even thought about the basic bodily chakra portion before Xiantian. He just needed to test it out. Hey! Spiral Meridians, Indefinite Spirit Emperor Art, 9 Destruction Violent Lightning Technique, Heaven Swallowing Energy Conversion Technique. Who knows, maybe I, Zhong Shou, can personally create a world-shaking technique. It is best if it can complement my spiritual cultivation. Oh right, my soul has reached the out-of-body realm and I also need to cultivate a soul cultivation technique. Although the heaven-swallowing energy conversion technique is good, it isn't suitable. I need to find another soul cultivation technique to complement it. The joy on his face faded and Zhong Shou started to frown. Li Yunyang was at the side and looked on in confusion. The disdain in her eyes couldn't help but become thicker. He knew that his cultivation talent wasn't as good as others and that he had a dual meridian body. He should work harder than others. However, he was so dispirited, lying on the soft bed all day. Who knows what dirty things he was thinking about? In the future, even if Little Miss could find a way to unlock the dual meridian body, it would be useless. This person was just a pile of mud that couldn't be helped. Looking at the carriage, when she saw the newly carved runes, Li Yunyang was slightly shocked. She thought to herself that the talisman formation within the carriage was really exquisite. However, a moment later, she didn't care anymore. Even someone like Yin Yang actually left Zhongsho. It was obvious that he didn't have much hope for this Gantian mountain prince. One could imagine the situation this kid was in. Just as she was laughing coldly, she suddenly saw a cloud of dust rise up behind the carriage outside the window. They came really quickly and, in just a moment, they had caught up. The person at the front was wearing a black shirt, around 40 years old, his body dyed in fresh blood. Behind him was a group of cavalry, 3 Xiantian masters, a total of 12 7 mythic masters in iron armor. At the very back were 2 girls whose cultivations weren't weak either. There were also 10 Windrider foals, a few of which had purple gold eyes and sharp horns on their heads. Li Yunyang's brows furrowed. She recognized this person. He was the housekeeper of the Cloud Saint City Lord Manor. She couldn't help but find it weird. Why wasn't this person in the city? Why was he here? Just as her hand was pressing down on her sword, she saw the black-shirt man jump up and fly in front of the carriage. After standing still, he bowed. "Benefactor, please wait for a moment. Lianqing has something to report." The 18 cloud-stepping foals in front were all shocked, standing up like humans. Su Chuxue finally managed to control the wildebeests and force them to stop. Li Yunyang, on the other hand, was secretly shocked. Benefactor? What did that mean? On this carriage, there was only one man, Zhongsho. Why did she call Zhongsho benefactor? Did she make a mistake? Zhongsho's thoughts were interrupted once more. However, this time he had expected it and wasn't angry. He didn't get off the carriage, only standing by the window and looking out. He expressionlessly glanced at the group of cavalry. "What do you want?" When he saw those exquisite bags, Zhongsho had a rough idea of why they were here. The 10 martial masters all got off their horses and knelt down in front of the cloud-crossing carriage. Their expressions were all extremely respectful and solemn. Li Yunyang felt more and more weird. Not long ago, she had heard that Cloud Saint City's attitude towards Zhongsho was extremely cold. Apart from the tight protection, they pretty much didn't care about him at all. The Cloud Saint City Lord didn't even see him once. The reason why Zhongsho left the city was said to be because Cloud Saint City wanted to chase him away. But what on earth was going on with this scene before his eyes? Lianqing opened his mouth once more, his voice still loud and respectful. "My master asked me to pass on the message. I won't forget this kindness. The prince's journey to the west this time is very small, which is why he sent these 10 over people to be the prince's bodyguards. These people are the city lord's servants and owe the city lord a huge favor. From now on, they will be the prince's slaves and can be ordered around. There are also some gifts to strengthen the crown prince's character." When she heard that, Li Yunyang's expression froze. 12 mythic masters, 3 Xiantian masters. Not only to follow him, but to directly give them to Zhongsho? That Cloud Saint City Lord Su Jingyuan's power was just average, but he actually dared to take out such a huge gift. What kindness did Zhongsho have to him? Why did he need to repay him with such a huge gift? Looking at those gifts, although they were wrapped in silk, one could tell how valuable they were from the aura, amongst which there were at least 4 grade 5 beast crystals. Zhongsho laughed, coldly shaking his head. "I don't want people. Zhongsho doesn't need anyone to protect him. However, I'll accept the gifts and horses from the city lord. I can use these Windrider foals." When Li Yunyang heard that, she was furious. "You Zhongsho, a piece of trash, actually dared to say that you don't need anyone to protect you? Did he really plan to rely on the 2 of them to return to Gantian Mountain?" These gifts weren't cheap. 18 Windrider foals, each one worth 30 grade 4 beast crystals. It was hard to find even with 10,000 gold. Only Cloud Saint City, which was close to the Cloud Ocean and was one of the places where Windrider foals were produced, could take them out. There were also 4 mutated golden eye Windrider beasts that could control groups of foals and scare off beasts. Their combat strength was really high, something that even they didn't have. Zhong Shou's tone was like accepting these things was giving Cloud Saint City a huge favor. Lianqing was slightly delighted, hesitating for a moment before opening his mouth. With the prince's ability, you really don't need these people. However, to ride the Windrider foals, you need a coachman. The person beside me is called Lianfan, and he is also a Xiantian. His ability isn't bad. He is really tight-lipped and loyal. His family, young and old, is under the control of the city lord. He definitely won't spoil the prince's plans. Zhong Shou was startled. Tight-lipped? Spoil my plans? What plans do I, Zhong Shou, have to be spoiled by you all? Following which he understood something, feeling like he didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He wanted to explain, but he was too lazy to waste his breath, thinking to himself that he would just let these people misunderstand. As for Li Yunyang, her mouth was agape as she stared at Zhong Shou. For the first time, she felt that this Gantian mountain prince, who was like trash in her eyes, was really deep and indiscernible. Chu Shui's brows rose up, revealing a look of joy. If there was a new coachman, then she would be free. Driving was the most boring and annoying thing. Chapter 114. Looking at Lianfan, Zhong Shou hesitated. One look and one could tell that he was a person of few words. Even when Lianqing said that he was going to give him to Zhong Shou as a slave, he wasn't moved at all. He also didn't have the arrogance of a Xiantian expert. He let Chu Shui drive the carriage to train her ability to control true qi. However, if it was these 18 Windrider foals, it would be a little too much. Using such a person as his driver was also a good idea. Just as he was hesitating, Xianyuan Iren, who was in a daze and didn't notice what was happening around her, suddenly had her eyes light up. I understand. This pill recipe is really amazing. It is even better than my sex exquisite cold pill. It is a great inspiration to me. I can't find the ice bluegrass and snow stem seeds, but I can try to use other herbs to replace them. Who knows, maybe I can create a new pill recipe. She looked like she really wanted to hug and kiss Zhong Shou. She still had some rationality, her face turning red as she eagerly jumped out of the window and returned to her carriage. Zhong Shou was speechless. Without the ice bluegrass and snow stem seeds, how could it be called the chilling spirit mysterious sense pill? At most, it could increase soul power, but to remove the firepower of the mysterious moon wood brilliance technique was impossible. Opening his mouth, Zhong Shou wanted to say something but stopped. In the end, he sighed helplessly. He looked out of the window once more. That's good, I'll take this person in. Lianqing was delighted, kowtowing once more. Thank you, Prince. It is Lianfan's fortune to be able to follow you. The city lord also said that Cloud Saint City is in the east of the continent and can't help you much. However, in the future when you take control of Gantian Mountain, if you want to rule over Donglin, we will follow your orders. I will definitely help the Crown Prince sweep through Donglin. After he finished, he stepped aside, respectfully standing at the side of the road with the 10 odd martial artists beside him. Zhong Shou didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He returned to Gantian Mountain to complete the wishes of that Zhong Shou. Dominating Donglin? He had no intention of doing so, nor did he have the time. After switching to the Windrider foal, the speed of Zhong Shou's carriage immediately doubled. Lianfan's driving skills were indeed much better than Chu Shui's. Without saying a word, he drove in front. His expression was cold and indifferent, but he did have some of Yin Yang's demeanor. Li Yunyang didn't leave with Xianyuan Iren. She silently looked at Zhong Shou from head to toe, countless thoughts spinning in her mind. How did this half-demon youth make Cloud Saint City owe him such a big favor? Even if he had saved Su Jingyuan's life, there was no need for him to act like this. Lianqing's attitude towards Zhong Shou was close to flattery. His words seemed to confirm that Zhong Shou would definitely be able to inherit the foundations of Gantian Mountain. Sweeping Donglin? It was like he didn't care about the experts of Donglin Cloud Continent at all. He also said that Cloud Saint City wouldn't dare to go against his orders. He actually called himself a subordinate and was willing to join Zhongsho. It made one speechless and amused, but it also made one feel weird. Looking closely, Li Yunyang couldn't help but shake her head. This Zhongsho still didn't have any martial artist aura. He hadn't even opened up his chakra meridians. Was such a person worthy of Lianqing's respect? Was there someone else behind him? Or was it that Gantian mountain monster King Zong Weiran didn't die? Unable to understand, Li Yunyang couldn't help but ask, "What did you do in Cloud Saint City?" Zhongsho lazily raised his eyelids and looked at this woman expressionlessly. He acted like he didn't see anything and continued to lie on the soft couch. He was too lazy to even look at this woman. His temper was good and he was calm, but that didn't mean that he didn't have a temper. Li Yunyang was furious, scoffing coldly. She knew that she wouldn't be able to get anything out of him, so she went out of the window and returned to the carriage behind. Even if this Gantian mountain prince had skills that some people didn't know about, if he wanted to compete with Mysterious Cloud Spirit Sect and Pill Fountain Sect, it would be like hitting a rock with an egg. What she didn't know was that the moment she left, a ball of light shone from Samuraim as he looked at the gift boxes that Lianqing had sent over. Zhongsho didn't care about things like beast crystals and monster bottles. He casually waved his hand and a long wooden box appeared in his hand. This true chi capturing technique came from the Heart Sutra that he had just pieced together. However, it was slightly sharp. When he summoned it, he didn't control his strength and caused the silk cloth to break into pieces. However, Samuraim revealed a satisfied expression. A newly created cultivation technique should be like that, sharp and domineering, leaving no room for error. His explosive strength was strong, but his stamina was really weak. Even if he changed it to spiral meridians, it wouldn't change much. Which was why life and death, victory and defeat were decided in an instant. If he didn't win, he would lose. If he didn't live, he would die. The sharper and stronger it was, the more it suited him. However, today it was just a blueprint. If he wanted to cultivate it, he needed a period of time to perfect it. He opened the wooden box with a palm, only to see a shining sword lying within. Lightning Tooth Sword? Samuraim's eyes lit up. Only after looking closely did he realize that it wasn't. It was actually a half-spiritual weapon. After the crafting failed, it changed into the shape of a lightning tooth sword. Although the crafting of the spiritual weapon wasn't completed, the strength of the lightning technique was stronger than normal lightning tooth swords. As it was a spiritual weapon crafting process, the sharpness and toughness of this sword were only weaker than his black wave sword. Good stuff. I was worried that my original one was badly damaged by this spiral sword energy. With this item, I don't have anything to worry about. Activating his meridians, a sword energy instantly seeped out from the tip of the sword. However, the spirit channels within weren't damaged at all. Zhongsho smiled slightly before keeping the sword. In the next moment, he took out a meridian spirit pill. Just now, he tested it. The meridians in his body had already stabilized and he could take a second pill. However, just as Zhongsho was about to release the demon eye silver bear, he remembered his other protector beast, the rising shadow lion. Now that we have left Cloud Saint City, it is time to call back Little Ji. Forming a seal with both hands, Zhongshoxin used his spiritual sense to sense. Just as he was about to summon Little Ji, he suddenly thought about Xianyuan Iran, who was following behind him. He couldn't help but feel conflicted. Just as he was hesitating, the rising shadow lion's message spread out in his soul. Peak Xiantian? There is actually an out-of-body realm spirit master? Zhongsho's eyes turned cold, laughing coldly as he gave up on that thought. He walked in front of the carriage and coldly looked at the low mountain peaks on the left. following which he smiled without much care, looking at Chu Shui, who was trying her best to shrink her body to hide her presence. Don't think about slacking off. Since you don't need to drive the carriage, then continue to catch birds. Looking at Chu Shui's small face, which instantly frowned even more bitterly than a bitter gourd, Zhong Shou was delighted, feeling a little happy. Thinking to himself, was this the joy of teaching a young girl? Not good. I, Zhong Shou, have actually become someone who likes perverts. Amongst the mountains, at the peak of a small mountain around 4,000 feet high, 4 people were facing the peak and looking down. 3 of them had cold and handsome faces, giving off a sinister aura. If Zhong Shou was here, he would be able to recognize that the leader was deceitful sword Ren Qianqiu, whom he had met once in Cloud Saint City. If it was the knowledgeable Yin Yang, he would be able to recognize who was beside Ren Qianqiu. They were Mist Sword Xie Jun and Rage Sword Yun Tao of the Cloudy Seven Swords. They both gave off a threatening aura. The 2 of them were like unsheathed blades, but they were slightly different. Yun Tao's aura was explosive and fierce, while Xie Jun's body was like a ball of mist, indiscernible and uncertain. The other person was around 30 years old. His face was yellow and he looked normal. However, there were a few talismans drawn on his face, giving him a weird aura. He held a seal in his hand, and threads of blue light gathered in the center of his palm. In the eyes of the 4 of them, a blue talisman appeared. A moment later, the yellow-faced middle-aged man looked exhausted, and the blue light in his hand dissipated. The talisman in the eyes of the 4 of them also disappeared. The yellow-faced middle-aged man closed his eyes and cultivated for a moment before saying expressionlessly, "This 100-mile vision technique is easy to cultivate, but it consumes a lot of soul power. To not let those 2 Xiantian notice, it consumes even more energy. I have just reached the out-of-body realm, and I can't hold on for too long." Brother Zhuang's technique is already not bad. 50 miles away you can still see everything, like it is right in front of your eyes. A spirit master's technique is really exquisite and mysterious. Xie Jun praised, but his eyes were filled with confusion. Only today, Cloud Saint City's attitude was a little weird. Previously, they killed all the men we arranged near the city gate. Now they even sent so many gifts and 18 Windrider foals, as well as a Xiantian expert. What exactly did the Crown Prince say to the City Lord of Cloud Saint City when they met? Why did Lianqing suddenly treat Zhong Shou so respectfully? If Su Jingyuan really wanted to protect this Zhong Shou, why did he let him leave? His words were filled with doubt. Not only Xie Jun, but the other people were the same. Their expressions were filled with confusion. That Cloud Saint City Lord's intentions are hard to guess. Maybe he couldn't take the pressure and could only chase this Zhong Shou away. He sent gifts because he didn't want to offend the person behind Gantian Mountain. Unfortunately, this technique can only be seen and not heard. Ren Qianqiu shook his head and tried to guess. However, when he thought back to how Cloud Saint City tried to kill him, it didn't make sense. His voice also became serious. I only know that the situation isn't right. If we don't kill this kid, there will be more variables. I feel the same. Xie Jun nodded his head. The earlier we end this the better. Only that Xian Mountain City Princess is a little tough. If we want to kill this Zhong Shou, we have to go through her. Speaking of which, who knows what Xianyuan Iren is thinking? Is she so dumb that she likes that useless Zhong Shou? Why did she have to be swept into this whirlpool? Her father is the Xian Mountain City Lord. If there is a chance, it is best if we don't offend her. Yun Tao's brows furrowed, his expression unhappy. Why bother about her? If she dares to block, just kill her. When we brothers do things, we only seek to be straightforward. Why would we have so many misgivings? Chapter 115. Yun Tao's brows furrowed, unhappiness written all over his face. Why bother about her? If she dares to block, just kill her too. When we brothers do things, we just want to be straightforward. Why would we have so many worries? Sixth brother, you can't say that. Xianyuan Iran's situation is different from before. I only recently found out that she is actually a direct disciple of Pill Fountain sect. We do have to worry about her. Ren Qianzhou laughed bitterly. His eyes were really relaxed and arrogant. However, it is easy to go around her. We don't need to waste time. As for how to go around her, he didn't explain. He said solemnly, apart from her, there is also this purple lightning spear Zhong Yuan who won't sit still and watch us kill Zhong Shou. This person is also problematic, and if I fight him, I have at most a 50% chance of winning. As for the few Xiantians that Zhongling recruited, Zhong Shou's few hidden spiritual guards, we also need to be wary of them. Between the three of us, who should stop them? Xie Jun smiled when he heard that. Brother doesn't need to worry about that, Blazing Flame Mountain will help us. Coincidentally, I know where those few people are and can go over to have a chat. They want to follow us and bite off a piece of meat from Gantian Mountain, so how can we not put in any effort? Choosing where to kill them will require some thinking. Ren Qianzhou's expression relaxed, his eyes filled with praise. I always trust fifth brother's eloquence. As for when to kill them, let's talk about it in a few days. At this moment, we don't know which path that prince will take. Lingyun ancestor Renquang said that he would protect him for 15 days, although it was limited to near Cloud Saint City. However, it is best if we act in a few days. Seeing that Xie Jun didn't object, Ren Qianzhou nodded his head and knew that this matter was settled. Following which he looked towards that spirit master surnamed Fang. Brother Fang, what do you think? Are you willing to follow us on this business trip? That spirit master surnamed Fang frowned slightly, instinctively wanting to reject. His name was Fang Long, a leader who didn't belong to any faction. Originally, he had nothing to do with this matter. It was only because he had some friendship with the three of them that he was invited to help. If that Zhong Shou really had no one to rely on, then so be it. Taking action would be a good deed, and at the same time, he could get some rewards. However, from the way the people of Cloud Saint City acted just now, it was clear that there was something more to this matter that he didn't know. Xie Jun seemed to have expected such a reaction, and his eyes flashed. If Brother Fang is willing to lend the three of us a hand, the 5th-grade protector beast in this child's hands will belong to Brother Fang. If you really get into any trouble, you can always hide in my Yunxiao Mountain. Fang Long's expression immediately changed. Greed and desire appeared on his face, but he forced himself to restrain himself. His eyes were clear as he said, with the strength of the three of you, killing this kid is as easy as cutting grass. Brother Ren has already comprehended the sword force. Not to mention those few Xiantian experts, even a martial ancestor expert might not be able to defeat him. Why do you want me to help you? Ren Qianzhou and Xie Jun couldn't help but exchange glances and smile. They knew that this person was tempted. The former shook his head slightly, spitting out coldly, as they say, a lion will go all out even when hunting a rabbit. I don't know what skills that Gantian mountain prince has, and I'm too lazy to guess. We just need to go all out and crush him. Who cares what methods he has? He won't be able to stop the four of us working together. Fang Long was deep in thought, his fists slowly clenched tight as he made a decision in his heart. Just as he was about to speak, he was shocked, looking to the left, only to see that there was no movement at all. He couldn't help but raise his brows curiously. For some reason, he felt like there was something there, like he was being spied on. However, when he spread out his spiritual sense to investigate, he didn't sense anything. After exiting Cloud Saint City, roughly 30 miles to the east was the eastern Cloud Ocean. Looking out from the edges of the land, there were large patches of clouds and mist. It was the same as the horizon of the Cloud Continent, rumbling and surging below. At this moment, roughly 7,000 miles away from the shore, at the center of the eastern Cloud Ocean, There was a fiery red woman standing in the air above the sea of clouds. She was burning with rage. Lei Dong, are you a rat? If you have balls, then come out. I know you are hiding here. Didn't you want to test your 100-dragon knife on me? Then come out and fight. Scolding out, Shui Lingbo still wasn't satisfied, stepping down heavily. She stomped heavily, causing the 1,000 miles of cloud ocean to shake. Energy surged, and large patches of mist were forcefully pushed away. However, there was still no trace of Lei Dong. Shui Lingbo scoffed coldly, the violent aura in her eyes growing thicker. What kind of crazy knife are you? Did you comprehend that mountain and water knife intent in the gutter? Since you have the balls to test your knife on me, then you should be mentally prepared to face the consequences. After I get serious, you are prepared to run and not fight? How is there such a good thing in the world? Waving her red sleeves, lightning flashed in the sky, numerous fire clouds gathered over. She took out those rumbling clouds and mist. At this moment, Shui Lingbo didn't look the same as she did 10 days ago. Her skin was more tender, like she was several years younger. At the center of her brows, there was a talisman with lightning and flames intersecting. Any breath she took had a huge amount of power stirring up the clouds and mist. Very good. You can continue to hide today. Don't let me catch you. Even if your uncle's father comes to plead for you, I will still skin you. Lei Dong, do you believe me? There was still no sound from the surrounding clouds and mist. Shui Lingbo rolled her eyes, deciding to use a soft approach since the hard approach didn't work. Forget it, I can't be too calculative with a junior like you. As long as you come out and apologize, I will let bygones be bygones. However, if I catch you, it won't be as simple as beating you up. Lei Dong, you have to think carefully. I will give you 15 minutes. After this time, you will have to bear the consequences. Following which she stood there silently. She didn't say anything and waited for a long time. On the left, roughly tens of miles away, a slightly hesitant questioning voice spread out. Are those words true? Shui Lingbo's brows rose up, her eyes filled with joy. She spread out her spiritual sense and locked onto where the voice came from. The expression on her face also became gentler. Of course it is true, it can't be any more true. Then you won't be calculative about me using you to test my blade? As long as you apologize, naturally I won't be calculative. After all, you are crazy about martial arts. I have seen many martial arts maniacs like you. You won't be bothered when I called you an old lady? Shui Lingbo's lips twitched as she clenched her fists, giving out cracking sounds. However, she bore with it, the smile on her face was still the same. I don't care. But I heard that your reputation isn't good and that you never keep your words. There was a hint of hesitation in his rough voice. Shui Lingbo was slightly shocked, revealing a confused expression. Is that so? I, Shui Lingbo, am a woman of my words. When have I ever gone back on my words? Then I will consider it. Oh right. I also called you an old demon woman. You won't eat me, right? I don't eat people. Shui Lingbo scoffed impatiently. Are you coming out or not? Her spiritual sense swept around, but she still couldn't find Lei Dong's true location. That rough male voice also chuckled. After thinking about it carefully, since you can't find me, why should I come out? You are really interesting. If you use candy to trick kids, you will be invincible. Are you playing with me? Shui Lingbo's brows furrowed, a violent glow flashing in her eyes. Her expression was close to going crazy. To think that you call yourself Maniac Blade. In front of a girl, you have to hide like a rat. What kind of man are you? Hey! A man knows when to yield and when to be soft or hard. Who says that hiding isn't a man? Lei Dong laughed, his tone filled with righteousness. You are just an old lady who hasn't even touched a man, so how would you understand the magnanimity and emotions of men like us? Shui Lingbo was instantly furious. Her hair stood on end and lightning flashed at the center of her brows. Very good. You won't come out, right? Then I will chase you out today. Even if I have to turn this sea of clouds upside down, I will still catch you, you rat. In the sky above, black clouds slowly gathered. Sets of green runes appeared behind Shui Lingbo's body. Numerous lightning bolts gathered over, totally wrapping around her body. It got bigger and bigger, 10 feet, 30 feet, 70 feet, 100 feet. When Shui Lingbo's eyes started to show threads of green and blue, numerous lightning balls struck out in all directions. It spread across 100 miles, forcefully striking out without any care for the consequences. In just a dozen breaths, lightning glows flashed all around. The entire cloud ocean was in a mess. Shui Lingbo's face was also becoming younger and younger. Who asked you to call me an old demon woman, old lady? If you have the balls, do you want to scold me again? If you have the ability, then continue to hide. When I catch you, I will skin you, pull out your tendons, cut you into 8 pieces, and cook you with pork and mutton to feed the dogs. I'm only 29. It is not my fault that I can't find a dual cultivation partner. It is you men who are useless and don't have the ability. The more she said, the more furious she got. The lightning glow around Shui Lingbo's body actually became several times larger, showing no signs of weakening. His face had also become younger, and his entire body was shrinking. Before this, she was 18 years old, but now she was 16 years old. Just as he was rising up in the sea of clouds, a small boat slowly sailed over from the distance. It hung in midair and sailed above the cloud ocean. There was also a graceful figure standing on the bow of the ship. She was holding a red umbrella and looking forward with a lazy expression. After staring for a moment, the woman sighed, "Senior Master, this fellow has that spiritual treasure on him. As long as he hides in the cloud ocean, who in the world can find him? Don't think that he is arrogant, he is actually really smart. Why waste time with him here? You have chased him for over 10 days in the cloud ocean, but in the end, did you hurt him at all? Who knows, he might have fled long ago. Even if Martial Uncle really wants to catch this rat, you should return to Martial Uncle's sect and bring the Great Yuan Heavenly Mirror here first." Shui Lingbo was too lazy to bother, lightning flashing in her eyes. Balls of lightning exploded all around like she didn't need soul power or spiritual energy. Chapter 116. Shui Lingbo was too lazy to bother, lightning flashing in her eyes. Balls of lightning exploded all around like she didn't need soul power or spiritual energy at all. Zhao Yanran laughed, controlling the boat below her to change direction, shaking her head. "I don't mind, but that junior brother might be kidnapped. He has been delayed for half a month. Who knows? He might have some fortuitous encounters and be targeted by those hidden sections. Although Cloud Saint City isn't far from Lingyun's sect, I heard that there is a grandmaster there." Shui Lingbo's expression changed, her expression uncertain. She wanted to give up, but she was unwilling. A moment later, she scoffed coldly. Her body flashed and she arrived on the boat that Zhao Yanran was standing on. In the next moment, her eyes were attracted by a stone at the back of the boat. "Isn't this the mountain and river knife intent of that rat Lei Dong? What an eyesore! Who did the sword beside it belong to? Formed from dozens of swords but formed from one sword. Splitting a sword intent into dozens of structures but not losing its true aura. TSK. They both comprehended the martial path intent of mountains and rivers, but it is much stronger than Lei Dong's. As long as one's comprehension isn't bad, one can comprehend some things. Who else can it be? Naturally, it is my junior brother who hasn't entered the sect. I heard that he gave Lei Dong pointers, which was why he carved the stone with a sword." As she said that, she saw that Shui Lingbo's eyes were glowing. Zhao Yanran was slightly shocked, saying expressionlessly, "Senior Master, you don't need to snatch from me, right? Instead of taking a piece of rock like me, why don't you go and get him himself?" The expression in Shui Lingbo's eyes became even more passionate. Her eyes looked at the sword mark, not willing to shift away for even a moment. The more she looked, the more she loved it. She couldn't help but want to reach out and touch it. When Zhao Yanran saw that, it was like her heart was sliced, her face turning green. Her body flashed. Blocking in front of the stone, "Senior Master, this is mine. Don't touch it." Shui Lingbo was slightly embarrassed. She rolled her eyes and said, "Yanran, you are my senior sister's disciple. We are family. Why do you have to make such a clear distinction? Why don't you give it to me? I'm willing to give this stone another dragon essence sword. Hasn't your junior sister envied me for a long time?" Zhao Yanran hesitated for a moment. After thinking for a long time, her face showed a difficult expression. "How about 3 years later? Disciples also use it to comprehend sword intent. However, other than the dragon essence sword, I also need 10 purple spirit pills." Shui Lingbo clicked her tongue and no longer had any interest in bargaining. He walked to the bow of the ship in high spirits. Sure enough, it was best to catch that person as soon as possible. As long as she entered Tai Yuan sect, she could have as many of these stones as she wanted. Not long after Shui Lingbo and Zhao Yanran left, another small boat appeared in the clouds and approached the sea of clouds. However, it didn't dare to get close to the area where the lightning glow spread out. It stopped 10 miles away. A moment later, a person flew out from the heavy lightning snakes and landed on the boat. He looked really haggard. The hair on his body was curled up and burnt. Only a few pieces of cloth were left on his body, barely covering his private parts, revealing his strong and muscular body. What a close shave! I was so close to being pulled out by that old demon witch. I only slightly offended her and she chased me for 15 days. Hey! As expected from the old demon witch that no one dares to offend. She has just removed her seal and reached the Grandmaster level. She is actually so terrifying. Shaking his head, Lei Dong brandished his 150-foot-long saber and slashed his body from time to time, leaving scars on his body. Suddenly, a ball of lightning appeared. Suddenly, it was an energy glow with a fiery glow. Lei Dong didn't care at all, directly asking the black shirt man, "Oh right, Old Black, what about my stone?" The black shirt old man smiled helplessly and bowed, "Please forgive me, master. The stone has been taken by Miss Zhao Yanran of Seven Spirits Sect." "How is that possible?" Lei Dong's brow furrowed, his eyes turning serious. "Old Black, you are also a martial ancestor with 5 meridians of the Earth chakra level. Even if that Zhao Yanran is the 4th generation first seat of Seven Spirit Sect, she can't lose to him. That lady said that if I didn't give it to her, she would rather destroy it." Lei Dong's expression was enlightened, but the black shirt old man was still extremely ashamed. "I am confident that I can beat her, but I am unable to protect that sword intent stone. Miss Yanran also said that if I lent it to her for 3 years, she would think of a way to draw Taiyuan Fairy away. I am useless. 3 years? She probably won't be able to return it. Forget it, I owe her a favor this time." Lei Dong scoffed, resisting the urge to beat his chest and stomp his feet. He drew a wound on his leg, following which he suddenly jumped up into the air. He headed west. Just as the black shirt old man felt weird, Lei Dong's voice spread out from afar. "I am going to meet Uncle. I sent a message talisman, so he should be here. This time I am prepared to go all out against that woman. Such a talent like Brother Show, I definitely can't let him fall onto the wrong path. Although I can't do anything to her, there will always be someone in the world who can." The black shirt old man was startled. So this matter wasn't over? Shaking his head, the old man continued to drive the leaf boat forward. In his heart, he was filled with questions. Song Xingdao wasn't a true demon sect. Even old master admired their ideals, so why was young master so anxious? Was it because he felt heartache for the quick sword intent stone? Or was he really tortured by that Taiyuan fairy this time? Sitting on the cloud-crossing carriage, Zhong Shou's right palm was a ball of true qi spinning. Half of it was a water-blue color, like clouds and mist, but also like pieces of ice. The other half was a deep red color, giving off a fiery glow. At this moment, two completely different air masses were swirling together like a spiral. They repelled one another, but also attracted one another. However, be it the fire element true qi or the mist true qi, there were threads of purple lightning flashing within. Lightning and fire accompanied one another, but most of the lightning in the world was born in the clouds. This was the qi cultivation technique that Zhong Shou had merged with the indefinite spiritual emperor art, 9 destruction lightning technique, and heaven-swallowing energy conversion technique. He named the self-created technique the world-shocking spiritual art. The name had nothing to do with the technique itself. Zhong Shou only wanted it to sound good and give off an aura. As long as he said the words world-shocking, others would know that this qi cultivation technique was really, really strong. The mist true qi naturally came from the Sky Fox illusion and merged with the 18 cloud shocking god-destroying sword intent. It could transform into thousands of illusions and also condense energy to harm others. With the purple lightning accompanying it, power was really strong. The other half of the fire element true qi came from the specialty of his body. 2 days ago, Zhong Shou finally recognized that the element of his human race bloodline was fire, a flame that covered the heavens. It still hadn't awakened, but during these 2 days, every time he meditated, he could feel that within his soul ocean there was an undying flame burning. Merging into the world-shocking spiritual art, there was one more qi cultivation technique that he knew in his last life, the extreme mysterious limitless flame. At this moment, he had only completed the 6 meridians of the bodily chakra realm, and there were still many flaws. However, the specialty that it showed was already obvious. Zhong Shou himself was deep in thought, looking like he was observing the true qi changes in his palm. However, in his head. Actually, he was thinking about Xianyuan Iren's matter, sorting out his chaotic thoughts. He wanted to break off the engagement, but with that girl's personality, she definitely wouldn't agree. The only way was for her to give up. However, similar to before, to do that was pretty much impossible. No matter whether or not he had the ability to protect himself, the outcome wouldn't be bad. Even if she knew that his soul power had reached the out-of-body realm, that girl wouldn't easily give up on the marriage. If he forcefully broke off the engagement, it would be tough to say what the outcome would be. That girl would most probably forcefully reject, but there was also a slight chance that she would agree. At the same time, she might see it as a huge humiliation and turn against him. Did she really have to keep her promise and not marry for the rest of her life? It was like he was a heartless person, and he was also a little unwilling for this girl to leave him. He was also unwilling to treat this girl as a passerby. What an inexplicable, complicated, and conflicted feeling. At this moment, the only thing he could place his hopes on was Xianyuan Iren's parent. Maybe he could make Xianyuan Iren change her mind. However, if he removed the title of trash, what if his future father-in-law that he had never met since he was young changed his mind? This Xian Mountain City Lord Xianyuan Tong was said to have a close relationship with his father, and their loyalty was unparalleled. Even if Zhong Weiran's whereabouts were unknown, there was still some relationship between the two of them. The reputation of breaking off the engagement was a little bad. The final outcome was unforeseeable. Speaking of which, am I feeling too good right now? Should he hide his strength or not? Killing was unavoidable along the way, so how could he hide it? Within his palm, a burning pain spread out. Zhong Shouxin came back to his senses. What a joke. I, Sword Emperor Tanqiu, actually know how to think about such a thing. Forget it. Let the heavens decide. When the boat reaches the bridgehead, everything will be fine. Who cares so much? If I can't break off the engagement, then I will marry this girl. I won't be at a disadvantage and won't feel disgusted. Anyways, I won't leave any leeway on this path, killing without stopping. In the end, she will find out. His mind slightly relaxed, Zhong Shou looked closely at the change in the ball of true qi in his palm. That spiral was going out of control, stabbing his palm in pain. Even the aura in his body was faintly aching. As expected, there are still flaws. If I am not careful, I will lose control. There is still much room for improvement. However, it can barely be cultivated. In the future, I will just change it. As for the other mistakes, I will only find out after cultivating it. It was said that 19,000 years ago, the cloud world was a martial arts desert. Until the desolate era, when many experts rose up, those primitive martial arts were slowly perfected. He created many ancient and dazzling secret techniques, which led to the golden age of martial arts in the cloud wilderness. I have many martial arts classics to learn from, so I can't lose to the people before me. Zhong Shou used his hand to pinch, dissipating that ball of true qi. This world-shocking spiritual art also had a strong explosive power but a weak endurance. This ball of true qi only lasted for roughly 2 hours before the energy in his body showed signs of drying up. However, this was in line with his original intention of creating this technique. Chapter 117. Ever since Zhong Shou's meridians were forcefully turned into a spiral shape by the meridian spirit pill. As a result, the speed at which he practiced qi refinement arts increased exponentially. He didn't need to spend too much effort to coordinate the conflicts in his meridians. When he used his true qi, the pain in his heart and lungs also decreased by a lot. At this moment, with just a thought, the energy in his chakra meridians started to change. The true qi in one meridian was like ice and snow mist, while the other was like a jumping flame. They wrapped around each other and spiraled. Before this, he had the foundations of the 7 meridians of the bodily chakra realm. When he changed to the world-shocking spiritual art, it was like water flowing through a channel. It easily turned into mist and fire, along with the world-shocking true energy of the purple lightning. In just a few hours, he started from the foundation chakra, breath chakra, all the way to the wisdom chakra. When he reached the 7th meridian, the organ chakra, Zhong Shou stopped. He hadn't created the cultivation method behind it. The organ chakra and meridians were the most important and the most complicated. If he wasn't careful, he would hurt his internal organs. Zhong Shou still didn't have a perfect solution. However, although he couldn't change the organ chakra, he could see the light of breaking through to the next realm. Samuraim's eyes sharpened, red and blue flashing in his eyes, like his icy blue eyes. All the energy in his body surged like a giant wave. It spun and charged towards the organ chakra. After obtaining the Xiantian essence energy from the lightning phoenix egg, Zhong Shou's body had a huge increase, and he had a chance to charge into Xuanwu ancestor or even ascended ancestor. However, the Xiantian essence energy in his body also caused the blockages in his meridians to become even more serious. The difficulty of breaking through had also increased by several times. However, when the energy spiraled, the blocked meridians and acupoints were all forcefully broken through. Even if there were some obstructions, Zhong Shou used all the 18 cloud shocking god-destroying sword intents and gathered them at one spot. With a slight charge, he could break through. He could only hear a series of popping sounds coming from his chest and abdomen. Half an hour later, when Zhong Shou opened his eyes again, he felt that his whole body was covered in black sweat, as if he had just crawled out of a smelly ditch. The stench was incomparable. Every time he had a breakthrough in his body refinement, or when a chakra meridian was unblocked, such a phenomenon would occur. However, today was a little different. Not only was the stench extremely disgusting, but the black sweat also carried traces of reddish-brown color. This was because the viscera chakra had been opened up one by one, and most of the poison and blood that had accumulated in the 5 viscera and 6 viscera had been discharged. This also meant that he had stepped into the 8 Meridian Mythic Master realm, and was only a step away from the peak of the bodily chakra realm. Zhong Shou sniffed his body and frowned. He directly threw his clothes out of the window, and used a talisman to restore his body to its original clean state. That still wasn't enough. Zhong Shou made a seal with his hands and used the clear wind technique to blow all the smell out of the window before stopping. When Zhong Shou once again looked at the various meridians in his body, he saw that within the viscera chakra, there were threads of essence energy circulating within. His meridian spirit pill had little effect here, and the spiral meridians weren't obvious. The flow of true qi was relatively slow, and there were also many conflicts. However, he could see threads of Xiantian essence energy seeping into his 5 viscera and 6 viscera, improving his 5 viscera and 6 viscera. This is the benefit of absorbing the essence of the phoenix egg. With the help of Xiantian essence energy, after opening up the chakra meridians, with the help of Xiantian essence energy, I will be able to complete the improvement of my body refinement and true qi in a short time. In just a month's time, my 5 viscera will be as strong as ever. The strength of one's 5 viscera and 6 viscera was the ability to resist poison. Even if a Xiantian expert ate any poison, as long as the poison wasn't too overbearing, his 5 viscera would be able to expel it. Next would be his appetite. After opening the 8 bodily chakra meridians, Zhong Shou could swallow an entire cow in one meal without any problems. He could absorb spiritual energy through food. It was also closely related to the various meridians in the body. It could strengthen one's foundation, blood, and marrow. My true qi capacity has increased by close to double. In my body, I have 252 open chakra meridians and main acupoints, and less than half of the 132 extra acupoints. The next step is to open up the external chakra meridians. I will need a period of time to accumulate energy to break into the Xiantian realm. As for the toughest part, the skin, Zhong Shou wasn't worried at all. If it was someone else, they would need at least a year of hard work. However, he had so much essence of the phoenix egg in his body, and it was strengthening his 5 viscera at every moment. He didn't even need to purposely train. In a few months, his skin, and muscles would be so strong that he could break through to the earth chakra realm without any worries and enter the Xiantian master realm. However, no matter how fast the cultivation of the martial path was, it couldn't be faster than his soul power. Sighing slightly, Zhong Shou's spiritual sense entered his Shenshao meridian body. Within his soul ocean, there was still a giant whirlpool. In just a few days, it had grown much stronger. However, all his soul power felt like it was burning. In the center, the 7-tailed sky fox and purple lightning phoenix didn't change much. At this moment, there were some more small talisman patterns in the core of the soul ocean. There were only 10 of them, like an essay, hanging in the deepest part of the soul ocean. They were the seeds of the true spiritual restriction, similar to the heaven talisman spiritual seeds outside. However, the latter was forcefully injected in, and formed a cycle. Zhong Shou was unable to refine it and truly make it his own. The latter was something he had painstakingly formed in these few days. The talisman represented the heaven path. The talisman represented all the phenomena under the heaven path. These were the so-called talismans. Beneath one true spiritual talisman, there were often dozens of true spiritual talismans. Beneath the true spiritual talismans, there were spiritual patterns. Using soul power to form true spiritual restrictions was the cultivation method of out-of-body realm spirit masters. Not only could it strengthen the soul, but it could also help to purify the soul. The soul of some peak spirit masters didn't even have any other changes. It was just a grand Tao essay formed from talismans. If one used spells, it involved the true spiritual restrictions that were formed within the soul or the true spiritual talismans that were formed later. One could save on soul power and increase the strength by several times. Before the out-of-body realm, The talismans that spirit masters used were all illusionary talismans. After the out-of-body realm, one's soul could leave the body and comprehend the heaven and earth. Only then could one truly understand the true meaning of talismans. This step was the true step into the path of spells. The mixing and merging of various talismans and talismans was the reason why all spells came from. Zhong Shou used just 10 days to form 12 true spiritual restrictions. Most of them were related to lightning and illusion, which he was the most familiar with and the easiest to form. However, such talent could be said to be one of a kind. Every day, he used the sky mirror soul shining technique to gather the true flame of the sun to burn his soul. At this moment, his soul power wasn't at the return to sun level. However, in his energy ocean chakra meridians, under the strong vital energy attacks, he didn't see any signs of weakening. In a few more days, I will form 3 true spiritual talismans and I will be able to break through to the night wandering realm. The lightning phoenix egg essence's help towards soul power cultivation was far from the true chi strengthening aspect. Helplessly, Zhong Shou's heart realm cultivation in the last life was simply too high. In this life, apart from the outer layer of his soul which was filled with holes, his spiritual cultivation talent could be said to be top-notch. This was why his soul power advancement far exceeded that of his martial path cultivation. Zhong Shou sent a bit of his intent towards the 12 god talismans spinning outside. As long as 3 true spiritual talismans were formed, he could try to refine the god talisman seeds outside. Reaching the heavens in one step wasn't a dream, although this process was actually really tough. Shortcuts were quick, but the path was hard. Zhong Shou silently meditated, continuing to try to form true spiritual talismans in his soul. However, this time, he failed several times in a row. Instead, it caused his soul sea to ripple. He knew that if he continued, there was no chance of success. Zhong Shou instantly stopped. He didn't feel much regret as he woke up from his meditation. To form a true spiritual talisman, apart from the control of the soul, one needed to be extremely precise. More importantly, one needed to truly understand the true meaning of the talisman. He thought that since he was a talisman path expert in the last life, it shouldn't be difficult for him to form a talisman now. However, only now did he notice that this process was much tougher than he imagined. Young master! Along with a bell-like laugh, Chu Shui's head suddenly hung down from the window. Her body was covered in bird feathers. Her red face giggled. Uncle Yen said that those horses can't run anymore, so we need to stop and feed them. Zhong Shou's brows furrowed, immediately stopping his plans to continue cultivating. Following which he smiled. The moment the carriage stopped, then Chu Shui didn't need to continue catching birds. During these few days, Chu Shui had already learned to hate catching those birds. The speed of the windrider foals was close to double that of the cloud stepping foals. They could gallop for a day and night without needing to rest. However, as long as they were still made of flesh and blood, there would be times when they would be tired. To gallop for long distances, one needed to rest and store up energy. When Zhong Shou got off the carriage, he saw that the surroundings were a dry forest. There were still many mountains around, but they weren't so tall and steep. It was obvious that they had passed through the mountains and reached the west end of the Sudian mountain range. Just as Zhong Shou's carriage stopped for a few breaths, another red carriage chased up. Zhong Shou and the other 2 all had a tacit understanding to start their own fires and barbecue beasts. On the other side, after Xianyuan Iren got off the carriage, she directly took out bags of green beans from her bag. These were planted in the spiritual fields of the large sex and had a certain amount of spiritual energy. If normal people ate it all year round, not only would it strengthen their body, but it would also have many benefits when cultivating energy. However, at this moment, Xianyuan Iren was only using it to feed the horses, not stingy at all. There seemed to be no end to the contents of the pouch. He took out a total of 10 pouches, about 24 buckets, just enough to feed 36 Windrider foals. Only then did he stop. Zhong Shou didn't look at those spiritual beings, only staring at the waist of Xianyuan Iran. He was filled with envy. This was a small heaven and earth bag, something he had seen numerous times in the game. In the early years when he fought for it, he only managed to snatch one after killing numerous people. Since then, he treated it like a treasure. Chapter 118. Just as he was engrossed in it, Li Yunyang walked over and burst out laughing. "What are you looking at?" That was given by the sect leader of the Pill Fountain sect, personally crafted by Old Man Mingdan. You can't even be envious. Even if it was placed in front of you, you wouldn't be able to use it. The corner of Zhong Shou's lips twitched as he retracted his gaze. Who knows if this Li Yunyang had reached menopause? She was like a porcupine. The small heaven and earth bag was a space magical artifact. Since it was called heaven and earth, naturally it had heaven and earth inside. Within it was a small heaven and earth. The smallest heaven and earth bag had a space of 200 square meters. It was made from the skin of grade 8 and above beasts, and the person who crafted it had to be above the day-wandering realm. In the last life, during the early stages of the God Emperor game, a heaven and earth bag could be sold for a sky-high price. It was only when the name of the Sword Emperor slowly spread throughout the cloud world. He had only killed 10 grade 8 beasts to craft a small heaven and earth bag. At that time, the price was still high, and he earned a huge sum of money. In the end, he even got one in the real world. However, in this era, things like the small heaven and earth bag were really rare. Even a large sect like the Pill Fountain sect only had 8 to 10 of them. For Old Man Mingdan to give this item to Xianyuan Iran, one could see that he really loved this disciple of his. He was indeed a little envious. In the future, there were even smaller rings that could only have a space of 1 to 10 meters. However, the price was cheap and really common. Any rich family could afford it. However, in this era, the small heaven and earth bag was the lowest grade space magical artifact. If he said that he wasn't envious, he would be lying. I have heard of the method to craft the void ring. I remember that west of Donglin Cloud Continent, there are a few places where Sumeru stones are produced. One of them is not far from Gantian Mountain. Now that I have cultivated soul power, I can try to craft 1 or 2 myself. It is really inconvenient to bring so many things with me. Zhong Shou unconsciously stirred the fire in front of him, causing the flames to burn even brighter. Just as he was thinking about what other materials the void ring needed apart from the Sumeru stones, Chu Shui and Lian Fan had already carried their prey back. It was actually 3 grade 2 snow pattern pigs, one weighing 4,000 kilograms. Zhong Shou's brows furrowed. He was interested. He personally roasted it. Although there were many beasts in the desolate forest, their meat was hard to chew and couldn't be swallowed. As for elite beasts like the snow pattern boar, because it was usually the most lazy, its meat was soft and its taste was also extremely delicious. Using the skills that he trained in the game, in an hour, the pig was roasted to be roasted golden brown. After sprinkling the spices, the smell was extremely enticing. The few people at the side mouths watering. Her eating to eat meat, in use by in the mouth, her in the mouth, in eating, her to at least add at the at Gantian. Eating the eating eat to see? Tat at liadat. Half of the pig leg was eaten in an instant. However, this woman was not willing to let it go. The meat is roasted well, but as the saying goes, a gentleman stays away from the kitchen. Not to mention the great heroes of the world, even some ambitious martial masters would not delve into these inferior skills. Xianyuan Iran frowned, feeling that her words were a little too much. Li Yunyang then looked at Chu Shui, who was still covered in feathers, and laughed mockingly. "You're a maid, catching those birds on the roof of the carriage every day, but what's the use of that? Is it fun? As his young master, aren't you going to do something?" He is a good martial arts seedling, but he doesn't train hard and wants to play with those birds every day. If this continues, he will be crippled. Chu Shui was already annoyed by this woman. When she heard what she said, she was even more annoyed. I want to play with the birds, what does that have to do with you? The young master wanted me to catch the birds. Even if I am crippled, it has nothing to do with you. Also, I am not playing. I have already caught 60 birds, and now I can catch 168 birds. If it was you, you wouldn't be able to do it. If you have the ability, why don't you play with them? Scolding people with empty words, what kind of ability is that? When he heard Li Yunyang say, playing with the birds, Zhong Shou couldn't help but laugh out loud. His thoughts subconsciously went astray. When he heard what she said, he laughed so hard that his stomach hurt. Li Yunyang scoffed coldly, looking at Zhong Shou with disdain. She didn't say anything, taking 2 bird cages from the carriage and flying into the forest. In just 45 minutes she came out. The bird cages were filled with sparrows, exactly 200 of them. Li Yunyang smiled confidently. After releasing them all, she stood in the middle of the grass patch. Her body flashed, occasionally catching the birds that flew away. At the start, it was okay, but slowly she was having trouble. First, 1 flew away, followed by 3, 5. In just a moment, there were only 120 birds left in this 100-feet area. Li Yunyang's face was still covered in cold sweat. Her eyes were filled with shock. When she looked at it before, she didn't see anything special about it. Looking at Chu Shui's movement technique, she was only a little stronger than normal mythic masters. However, she was able to control so many birds within 100 feet. If a mythic master who had just reached the peak of 8 meridian could do that, then as a Xiantian master, she would naturally be able to do it easily. However, the current situation was totally different from what she had expected. Her speed was close to double that of Chu Shui's, but she was unable to accurately capture the flight path of these birds. A moment later, Li Yunyang gave up, her face dark and sunken as she stood on the spot. She allowed the birds to fly away. When Chu Shui saw the situation, she giggled. Look, the birds have all flown away. Following which she looked seriously at Li Yunyang. So you don't even know how to play with birds. Zhong Shou had already suffered internal injuries from laughing, but he forced himself to hold it in. He stared solemnly at Chu Shui. Shui, shut up. If you don't speak, no one will think that you are mute. Chu Shui stuck out her tongue and continued to gnaw on the pig leg. She had a big appetite, so she ate 2 pig legs by herself. She was only worried that she couldn't eat more, so she hoped that no one would talk to her. Xianyuan Iren was deep in thought. After thinking for a moment, she couldn't help but say to Zhong Shou in admiration, "Did you think of this method?" As expected, it is a good method. It is suitable for Chu Shui. Chu Shui's intuition is also amazing. Li Yunyang's face turned green, and after scoffing coldly, she silently walked to the side of the fire and sat down. Her face was dark and uncertain, and under the light of the fire, it looked really weird. Following which, be it Xianyuan Iren or Li Yunyang, they didn't say anything else. After the few of them ate and drank their fill, they sat beside the fire and rested. Zhong Shou sat cross-legged like he was sleeping. The hand in his sleeves was still holding a cloud pattern flying knife. Using energy to wash the knife, using spirit to nourish the blade. Using his spiritual sense as a bridge, he copied threads of cloud shocking God-destroying sword intent onto the knife. The material of the cloud pattern flying knife had pretty much reached the peak of talisman weapons. The sword intent it could carry was 5 times that of the Willowmark knife. Now that Zhong Shou was at the out-of-body realm, replicating the cloud-shocking God-destroying sword intent was much easier. However, the number of knives he carried didn't increase, but instead decreased, and he only brought 4. Although his 6 gods' defensive knife art didn't miss its target, every single slash consumed a significant amount of mental energy. The more focused he was, the stronger the killing power would be. When the sky turned bright, the Windrider foals had rested up, and the few of them were ready to move. In the forest in the distance, a flame charged into the sky. At 50,000 feet, it exploded in the air, and it was a pill word. Red flames lit up the sky, visible for thousands of miles. When Li Yunyang saw this, her expression froze. Xianyuan Iren instinctively got up, acting like she was about to run towards the direction of the flames, but she suddenly stopped. Looking at Zhongshou, she hesitated. On the other hand, Zhongshou looked at the sky and expressionlessly said, "It's your pill fountain sect's fire talisman. Fellow sect members within 1,000 miles are calling for help. If they don't need help, they are facing a life and death crisis. It shouldn't be far from here, less than 60 miles. Miss Xianyuan, why aren't you going?" Xianyuan Iren couldn't help but look at Zhongshou in shock. She was shocked at how knowledgeable Zhongshou was. However, she still didn't move, her expression still uncertain. When Zhongshou saw this, he shook his head. "Miss Xianyuan, don't think too highly of yourself. You just borrowed the power of the external pill to reach Xiantian. Those people haven't acted yet because of another reason, not because of you. Furthermore, I have Lian Fan and your maidservant beside me. Even if something happens, I will be able to hold on until you rush back." Xianyuan Iren was slightly startled, still unable to make a decision. Although Zhongshou's words made sense, she still felt that something wasn't right. However, at this moment, she couldn't think of anything. Li Yunyang also stood up and bowed. "Miss, don't worry and go. Yunyang will take care of things here. Fellow sect members failing to call for help is a huge crime. If your fellow sect members are just looking for help, then it's okay. However, if they face a life and death crisis, then..." Before her words landed, Xianyuan Iren was like a light swallow as she flew out. She formed a spell and charged into the air. In an instant, she was thousands of feet away. She only said, "I'll be back soon." Her body had already disappeared in midair. The forest regained its calmness once more. Everyone waited quietly. After a few minutes, Zhongshou suddenly smiled, tying the lightning-tooth sword and black wave sword to his waist. Then, he casually leaned against the giant tree behind him. His expression was lazy as he looked at the forest that suddenly seemed really weird and dark. What was going to come would come in the end. He had waited for a full 5 days for this battle. If he didn't use the blood of these small fries to strengthen himself, wouldn't the journey back be boring? Lian Fan had obviously been through a lot, grabbing his weapon right away. Chu Shui and Li Yunyang both had wary expressions on their faces. A moment later, 3 people walked out of the forest, each taking a side as they walked out from the shadows. One of them was skinny, one looked like a scholar, and the last one had a sturdy build. They all had sword-shaped weapons at their waists, but the length, width, and thickness were all different. The one at the front was Ren Qianqiu. He walked over while saying, "Remember what I said a few days ago? At most, in half a month, I, Ren Qianqiu, will take your life. Now, as promised, I have come." Chapter 119. Xianyuan Iren's body rose up and down as she sped through the dense forest. Using spells, 60 miles of distance was covered in an instant. In just a moment, she saw a 30-over red-robed scholar sitting on the ground amidst the messy rocks at the foot of a hill. In front of him was a pill furnace, there was a fire under it, a thread of smoke rising up. Beside it was a spring that gave out cold energy. The spiritual energy around was abundant and cold mist spread all about. "Senior brother Yuan Ding?" Xianyuan Iren was slightly delighted, following which she stopped, standing 1,000 feet away, her face filled with shock. "Senior brother used the fire talisman to summon me. Why did you do that?" That red-robed scholar raised his head. His face was clearly defined, and his face was the color of copper. At this moment, his face was filled with joy. "Junior sister Iren, you came at the right time. I just picked 3 nether radiant fruits, and in my excitement, I want to refine a few nether spirit pills that can promote the growth of beast souls. In the end, I didn't have enough spiritual energy and nearly destroyed the pills. Since Junior Sister came, you can help me control the fire. Nether fruit, nether spirit pill? Xianyuan Iren was slightly startled, her eyes filled with shock as she looked towards the pill furnace. She instinctively walked over, however, when she was 300 feet away, her nose sniffed, her brows instantly furrowing. Why did senior brother lie to me? This isn't some nether fruit. It is just the smell of the yun lavender and mingfan fruit combined. The spring beside you isn't the ice vein cold spring that can refine the nether spirit pill. As she said that, Xianyuan Iren seemed to have realized something, her body flashing as she retreated explosively. She turned into a red light and charged towards the sky. When the red-robed scholar saw that, he couldn't help but sigh. No wonder Master always said that Iren is the person in our pill fountain sect who has the highest chance of inheriting his legacy. Maybe your spiritual cultivation and martial arts talents aren't outstanding amongst us, but in terms of pill refining talents, we can't compare to you. This yun lavender and mingfan fruit was something I racked my brains to concoct. I thought that using it to disguise the nether spirit fruit was perfect, but I couldn't even fool you for a moment. Suddenly, he threw out something that looked like a red embroidered ball. It suddenly exploded in midair, and countless red threads spread out. Shockingly, they formed an incomparably huge cage at this moment, covering an area of several hundred feet. The entire space seemed to have been separated from the rest of the world. The outer walls were locked by countless threads, and numerous talismans could be vaguely seen. Xianyuan Iren took out a scarlet-red wooden sword, the flames around her body blazing. She slashed and charged with all her strength, but she was unable to break through. Instead, she was bounced back by an invisible force. When his figure landed on the ground, his expression was extremely gloomy as he looked at the red-robed scholar. His eyes were filled with anger. Yuan Ding felt guilty and subconsciously turned his head away. Junior Martial Sister, don't blame me. This red spider thousand silk cage is something that eldest senior martial brother lent me. Without this thing, I wouldn't have been able to trap you. However, with my magic power, I can only last for 6 hours at most. At that time, Junior Sister can just leave. This time, Senior Martial Brother is under orders from the sect. That Zhong Shou has a dual meridian body and is unable to cultivate, so he isn't a good match for Junior Martial Sister. Master also said that the Mysterious Moonwood Brilliance method has some flaws. Mysterious Cloud Spirit Sect has a mysterious chill ancient pill passed down from the Desolate Era that can help Junior Martial Sister. I had no choice but to do this today, please forgive me. Xianyuan Iren didn't say a word, turning around and slashing out with her sword once more, causing ripples on the invisible barrier. Dozens of talismans rose up around her body and burned one after another. On the wooden sword, the flames burned brightly. After slashing dozens of threads, it was in a stalemate with the power of the thousand silk cage. Seeing that she was still unable to break through, Xianyuan Iren spat out a fire pill from her lips, striking at the layers of threads and burning them. She ate a few more pills, causing the sword glow and flames to become even stronger. Junior Martial Sister, why are you doing this? Yuan Ding shook his head. Do you know who is attacking them? Yunxia Mountain's deceitful sword Rin Qianqiu, Mist Sword Xiejun, Rage Sword Yun Tao. Even among Xiantian masters, they are 1 in 100. Although that prince has a Xiantian master and Li Yunyang beside him, they are far from the opponents of the 3 of them. Any one of them can easily deal with them. Based on what I know, apart from the 3 of them, the Yunxia Mountain Lord also invited another person to follow in the dark. Your fiancé definitely has no chance of surviving. Even if you rush back now, you won't be able to do anything. Xianyuan Iren bit her lower lip, fresh blood seeping out from the corner of her lip. She flipped her hand and took out several golden needles, stabbing them into her body. The fire aura instantly rose up, becoming several times stronger. Yuan Ding's pupils constricted. Junior Marshal Sister, have you gone crazy? For that trash, you actually used the crazy demon needle technique. He didn't dare to let her go. Just as he was about to step forwards, he saw Xianyuan Iren looking over coldly, her eyes filled with a cold glow. Yuan Ding was shocked and stopped in his tracks. After thinking about it for a moment, he had an idea and took out several talismans. If Junior Marshal Sister doesn't care about yourself, I can't stop you. However, I am good at talisman formations. If I go all out, I am confident that I can stop you for a few more hours. If Junior Sister continues on like this, I will disregard everything and make Junior Sister stay here for an entire day. Lady Xianyuan has already agreed to cancel the marriage, and the city lord is also tempted. That mysterious cloud spirit sex Han Nishui was personally chosen by Senior Marshal Brother for you. Junior Marshal Sister, are you not going to listen to the orders of your parents and the words of your Senior Marshal Brother? Xianyuan Iren was startled. The hand holding the sword couldn't help but tighten. She looked in the direction she came from. Not only did the fire not reduce, but it became even more intense. The anxiousness in her eyes slowly retreated, turning into determination. I will respect my parents and master in the future. However, I definitely won't listen to such random orders and do things that betray justice. Even if the mysterious moonwood brilliance method has flaws. Even if I die in the future, it is better than being a traitor. Iren's name, when read in reverse, is benevolence and righteousness. This is also my martial path. Without hesitation, she stabbed the last golden needle into the center of her brows. That sword light instantly surged like a dragon. With just one sword, it sliced a small half of the dense thread. Yuanding sighed once more. The few talismans in his hand flew out and struck out in all directions, turning into spiritual light rippling. In that instance, the space within the 1,000-thread cage became several times more stable. Those threads that were trained started to heal. Coincidentally, at that moment, an unsteady sword aura rose up in the distance. The remaining energy rippled, and even tens of miles away, one could sense it. Yuanding's brows rose up, joy flashing across his face. As for Xianyuan Iren, she gritted her teeth so hard that they nearly broke. Within the dense forest, the aura was even colder and heavier. Yunxia Mountain Mist Sword Xie Jun greets Prince Zhong Shou. That scholarly-looking male also walked up. The aura gathered, looking both illusionary and foggy. It was like a ball of mist floating in the mountains. Real and fake was hard to discern. Along with Rin Qianchou's sword aura, it was changing and changing. As for the burly man, he had a sinister smile on his face. I am Furious Sword Yun Tao. I have come with my big brother to take your life. When he walked, he held his head high like a fierce beast, giving off a maniacal aura. He coldly stared at Zhong Shou like he was looking at his prey. Lian Fan's eyes squinted. His breathing instantly became heavy and heavy. However, he still pulled out his weapon. It was a bright hook-shaped spiritual weapon. His face was really cold. Li Yunyang giggled, retreating 200 feet away and standing far away. Deceitful sword Rin Qianchou slightly bowed towards this woman. Are you Miss Li Yunyang? Before this, someone had already informed us. This matter has nothing to do with you. Us brothers will clean up the matter here and won't let Miss Iren know. This Zhong Shou and I have some small grievances. That Zhong Weiran also offended my mountain lord in the past. This time we won't let him die so easily. If you can't bear to watch, you can wait nearby. Li Yunyang shook her head, not intending to move. I'm not at ease. It's better if I stay here and watch. In the past, I have killed many people. What kind of scenes have I not seen? No matter what methods you use, as long as this Zhong Shou dies, I'll be at ease. Chu Shui was instantly furious, viciously staring at Li Yunyang. Zhong Shou rubbed his temples helplessly, thinking to himself what kind of situation was this. 4 rabbits, in front of a tiger, discussing how to kill the tiger and dismember its corpse? Weren't they a little too calm? When Rinchiencho heard that, he grinned. That's good too. However, my methods are bloody. I only hope that you can bear with it and not spit it out. His cold gaze once again looked at the half-monster teen under the tree. Just as his eyes were filled with killing intent, Zhong Shou shook his head. She saw Zhong Shou shake his head, not standing up, casually instructing, "Schwer 10 miles south there is an out-of-body realm spirit master. Go with me, the lion, and bring me his head. I'll give you 15 minutes. If you exceed it, I'll spank your butt." Chu Shui didn't stare at Li Yunyang anymore. She acknowledged and didn't hesitate to jump towards the south. At this moment, not only were Li Yunyang and Lian Fan startled, but Ren Qianshou and Xie Jun were also shocked. Li Yunyang felt both angry and amused. To ask Chu Shui to leave now, did he want her to escape? Would the 3 of them just sit there and watch? Even if there was an out-of-body realm spirit master, how could Chu Shui deal with him? Ren Qianshou and Xie Jun were shocked. There was indeed a spirit master 10 miles to the south. How did this Zhong Shou know about it? Just as he instinctively wanted to stop Chu Shui, who was galloping forward. However, Zhong Shou suddenly got up and patted the grass and dust off his body. Then, he also pulled out his sword, holding the lightning tooth sword upside down. He revealed a mouthful of white teeth and looked over with a faint smile. "I, Zhong Shou, am a kind person. I don't know how to torture people. I have no choice but to let you all die." Chapter 120. I, Zhong Shou, am a kind person and can't think of any cruel way to die, much less torture people. I can only let you all die. Li Yunyang instinctively burst out laughing, thinking that Zhong Shou was about to die and still had the mood to joke. But in the next moment, he felt a strand of an extremely strong, sharp, and unyielding aura that was mixed with a strand of ghastly killing intent suddenly sweep towards him. Li Yunyang's heart shook. Although this aura wasn't targeted at her, she still felt terrified. Like a cat whose tail was stepped on, the hairs all over her body standing up. The expressions of Ren Qianshou and the other 2 all changed. They didn't have time to care about Chu Shui as they all looked towards where the aura came from. Following which, where Zhong Shou was originally standing, there were only a few talismans burning in midair. His body had disappeared from the spot. He turned into an invisible white shadow, his aura like that of lightning. Only at the tip of the sword, a sharp glow flashed, threads of purple lightning flashed. This sword was astonishingly fast and sharp to the extreme. Zhong Shou seemed to have gathered all his strength at the tip of the sword. Just like the aura that the 3 of them had sensed earlier, it was similarly extremely strong, extremely sharp, extremely tough, and incomparably sharp and domineering. Ren Qianshou's expression changed, instantly turning ashen white. He crazily retreated, the sword in his hand turning into millions of sword lights as he went all out to try and block. He was called the deceitful sword by others, and the sword that he usually used was always weird and hard to predict. Every time his sword slashed out, it would be at a location that others couldn't predict, and he was always proud of that. However, at this moment, he hated his sword path. Under this extremely sharp and overbearing sword attack, he had no way to block it at all. There were no changes, just the simplest direct stab. However, when this sword struck out, it was like a shooting star, allowing him to weave out layers of sword shadows. The sword attack was still unable to stop as it stabbed in. This is sword strength. No, it should be sword intent. That's not right, it's actually a sword rhythm. The Zhong Shou in front of her, even after he exploded, was only an 8 meridian mythic master. However, at this moment, he felt as if a heavenly martial master was attacking him. It was unstoppable and unstoppable. Just as the cold, glinting tip of the sword was a foot away from his throat, he suddenly stopped. A trace of joy finally appeared on Rinchiencho's face. Finally, at the very last moment, he was able to capture the path of the sword. His body felt relaxed and cold sweat seeped out of his body. However, after a short while, Rinchiencho's pupils shrank to the size of needles again. Zhong Shou's sword suddenly flashed with lightning, and the speed of the sword also increased by almost 10 times in an instant. It pierced through the space of less than a foot and pierced into his throat. Rinchiencho could even clearly hear the sharp sound of the sword piercing through his throat. There was also the sizzling sound of his flesh being torn apart by the lightning. Streaks of destructive spiral energy rushed into his body, destroying the life force in his body. There was also a whirlpool that seemed to be swallowing his essence energy, causing him to lose all his strength. In that moment they all disappeared without a trace. His knees went soft as Rinchiencho knelt down powerlessly in front of Zhong Shou. At that moment, the figures of the 4 people in the forest were like wooden statues as they stood rooted to the ground. Li Yunyang's mouth was wide open, that mocking smile didn't even have time to recede from her face. She looked at Zhong Shou without blinking, her eyes looking like they were about to fall out of their sockets. As for Mist Sword Xie Jun and Rage Sword Yun Tao, they were only able to step out 100 feet before they couldn't move anymore. Being locked onto by Zhong Shou, a cold, killing intent stabbed into their hearts. It was like as long as they moved slightly or took half a step forward, they would attract Zhong Shou's sharp and dangerous sword. Lian Fan was expressionless, but his chest was heaving up and down, waves raging in his heart. His tightly clenched teeth gave out a piercing pain, which was why he didn't think that everything in front of him was a dream. When he was sent by Su Jingyuan to be Zhong Shou's servant, he didn't understand why. However, he was a person of few words and wasn't willing to go against his master's orders, which was why he reluctantly followed orders. The kindness he owed in the past had to be repaid. Only now, personally witnessing this scene did he finally understand some of the reasons. Su Jingyuan sent him to be a subordinate of the Gantian Mountain Prince, not to send him to his death, but to fulfill his wish. With the body of a grade 8 mythic master, with just one sword, he caused Rinchiencho, who was known as the Deceitful Sword and had comprehended sword strength, to die on the spot. No wonder Lianqing, who represented Su Jingyuan that day, was so respectful to the prince, following which he found it amusing. Before this, he felt that Zhong Shou's expression was a little weird, but now he understood how the prince felt. A moment ago, the 4 of them were excitedly discussing how to torture Zhong Shou to death. A moment later, Rinchiencho's throat was pierced and he was dead. In this world, there probably wasn't anything funnier than this, right? In Zhong Shou's eyes, how were the 4 of them any different from clowns? Although their words were terrifying, they could only make one laugh. At this moment, he was only worried that Zhong Shou's sudden burst of strength, or did he really have the ability to kill a peak Xiantian master? Zhong Shou held the sword, feeling that the essence energy he had drawn out had reached the limit of what he could control. Only then did he pull out the sword. He allowed Rinchiencho to cover his pierced throat, not bothering. He turned around and looked at Yun Tao. "You are called Rage Sword, why aren't you angry anymore?" Yun Tao's eyes turned red as he hollered. He waved the 7-foot giant sword in his hand and continued to stride forward. He brought with him a whirlwind as he furiously chopped down. As for Mist Sword Xie Jun, he had a different reaction. His body floated backward. Then, he didn't even turn his head as he crazily fled into the distance. Zhong Shou laughed lightly, waving his sleeves without a care. A cold light pierced out, and he similarly stabbed out with his sword. This time, however, it was fleeting and fluctuating, completely lacking the sharpness of its previous sharpness. The person was like a cloud, the sword was like a mist. In the eyes of Li Yunyang and Lian Fan, 1 turned into 2, 2 turned into 4, and it was hard to discern the true form. Even Yun Tao's eyes were filled with a lost and dazed expression. A sword shadow suddenly pierced out from the clouds. With a light stab, it pierced through Yun Tao's left chest and pierced his heart. At the same time, the giant sword heavily smashed into the ground with a loud clang. Yun Tao's body was still standing, using his sword as a base. Blood flowed out of his chest like a fountain. His eyes were wide open, like he wanted to remember the white-shirt teen in front of him. Li Yunyang felt a chill run down her spine, unable to believe her eyes. This was the Zhong Shou that she saw as trash, who she mocked and mocked for 10 days, but never got angry? The famous deceitful sword Rin Qianshou of the Yunxia 7 Swords and Rage sword Yun Tao died just like that? Was he dreaming, or were these people putting on an act for him? Instinctively, Li Yunyang looked towards the direction that Xie Jun had left in. When she looked out, she felt a chill run down her spine. Not far away, there was a white light chasing after the person who was swiftly fleeing. It was also silent, like a dream. No matter how fast Xie Jun ran, he was still being swiftly closed in. He suddenly twisted his body in mid-air at an unbelievable angle. He suddenly turned to the south, but in the next moment the white light also turned. Not only did it follow closely, but the distance between them was also shortened. It's a flying knife. The flying knife changed direction. Li Yunyang's face was as white as paper, unconsciously grabbing onto her dress. She used a huge amount of strength, nearly tearing the cloth apart. She didn't dare to imagine what the outcome would be if the knife was aimed at her. Before her words landed, the white light in her field of vision suddenly exploded out with a ball of light. It was as if a tyrannical and absolute will had suddenly pressed down within the dense forest. At the same time, Xie Jun also let out a cry of shock and despair. Sword intent? Why is it the cloud-shocking god-destroying sword? His voice came to an abrupt halt, followed by a sharp clang. Li Yunyang only saw Xie Jun and his sword being pinned to the tree by the flying knife. Following which there was no more sound, and she didn't know whether he was dead or alive. At this moment she only felt her mind go blank, totally at a loss, not knowing how to react. She instinctively thought back to a few days ago when Lianqing knelt on the ground and said those words to Zhong Shou. In the future, when the prince controls Gantian Mountain, if you want to rule Donglin, we will follow your orders. I will definitely help the crown prince sweep through Donglin. Before this, when she heard those words, she only felt that it was funny, but now she didn't laugh at all. Instead, her heart tightened. In less than 100 breaths, 3 Xiantian pinnacle experts were already lying on the ground, dead. How could she still laugh? She remembered that Gantian Mountain Zhong Sure reached Xiantian not long ago when he was 20. This Zhong Shou in front of her was only 13 and was already a grade 8 mythic master, and had the ability to kill peak Xiantian experts. With such strength, how could he not easily control Gantian Mountain? If he stayed a few more years and swept the Donglin cloud world. No wonder that Su Jingyuan was so arrogant, but he was willing to be Zhong Shou's subordinate. Then what about her? What was she? A joke? Since he had such strength, why did he hide it? Wouldn't all the big sects in the world chase after him? 19 spiritual houses, 10 shrines, even if they risked their lives, they would try to recruit this prince. Oh right, there was also the sword intent. Just now when he killed Yun Taoshi, as well as that flying knife, it was obviously the cloud-shocking god-destroying sword intent. And that sword at the start, she could tell that it was just a sword rhythm. But that martial path intent had the vast intent of a Xiantian ancestor when he attacked. The sword rhythm level had the essence of sword intent. And it was 2 totally different sword paths gathered in one body. They both had high attainments, and there was no problem in switching between them. Li Yunyang only felt that she was about to go crazy. What kind of monster was in front of her? Chapter 121. Sword intent. It's actually sword intent. Rinchiencho, who was half kneeling on the ground, spat out a mouthful of fresh blood. His expression was dark and sinister, filled with despair and self-mockery. Hee. So the trash that everyone thinks of is actually a genius who reached 8 meridians of the bodily chakra realm at 13 years of age. What a joke, what a joke! What a joke that Gantian Mountain Zongyang actually wanted to fight for the throne with you. What a joke that I, Rinchiencho, had eyes but didn't see, overestimating my strength. Zhongsho looked coldly at Xiejun in the forest, confirming that this person had no chance of survival. Only then did he turn his head and look over in shock. It seems like your life is even stronger than a cockroach. You actually didn't die? Rinchiencho's eyes were about to pop out of their sockets, his brain feeling heavy, his consciousness slowly fading away. His face was even more vicious and crazy. You think that you can be at ease after killing the 3 of us? How can you imagine the methods of my Yunxia Mountain Lord? Behind the 3 of us, there is definitely someone else. Who knows, it might be that Li Yaling, hee. Us brothers will leave first and wait for the prince to come down and meet me. When he said the words Li Yaling, Li Yunyang's body shook once more, revealing a look of fear like she had heard something really terrifying. The last bit of blood on her ashen white face disappeared. She pretty much forgot about the shock that Zhongsho gave her before. Rinchiencho spat out blood, like he wanted to say something. However, before he was able to open his mouth, Zhongsho slashed over with a sword, directly slicing off his head. Then, he looked towards the dense forest on the left in deep thought. On one of the branches there was an owl. It was hanging upside down and looking at them. Its feathers were green, hidden in the leaves. Its aura was really weak, pretty much undetectable. 1 man and 1 eagle, just exchanging glances for a moment. Zhongsho's face was filled with a smile. Their horse carriage descended here. Almost all the birds and beasts within 1,000 feet radius had already fled and disappeared without a trace. Only 1 owl was left here. Wasn't that weird? That owl's eyes shone, and in the next moment it flew into the air. Its body swelled up by 10 times, fanning a giant wind as it tried to fly into the distance. With just a wave of his hand, he was able to travel over 7,000 feet. Zhongsho shook his head. The lightning-toothed sword in his hand was thrown out. It turned into a purple light flashing in the air, piercing through the owl. With a mournful cry, the giant bird in the sky immediately fell to the ground. Zhongsho didn't look carefully, only waiting for the bird to land before he reached out with his hand. Zhongsho's corpse, and Shozazazazaz. Samurai was filled with doubt as he looked at Li Yunyang, who was in a daze. Who is that Li Yaling? Why haven't I heard of him? To be able to make Li Yunyang, a Xiantian master, so terrified, he should be really famous. However, no matter how hard Zhongsho tried, searching his memories, he couldn't find any information about this person. That Zhongsho was ignorant and didn't know. Tens of thousands of years later, whether it was the historical books in the real world or the game God Emperor, which was based on everything that happened in this era, there was no such person as Li Yaling. Was this person a martial ancestor expert? Li Yunyang came back to her senses, scoffing coldly. Her face was green and she didn't want to reply. With what happened just now, she asked herself, no matter how servile she was now, this Gantian mountain prince wouldn't let her have a good time. She might as well have been more firm from the start. Following which Zhongsho calmly raised the lightning-toothed sword to his lips and blew. The human blood and eagle blood on the sword dripped down one after another. The green-white sword light shone on Zhongsho's smiling face, making it look really dark. Li Yunyang's heart jumped. She thought about it and didn't dare to persist. You haven't heard of Li Yaling, but have you heard of the 100,000 blood killer Li Yunhong? Li Yaling is his new name. This person believes in the killing path, saying that as long as he kills 100,000 people, his martial path will be completed and he will be invincible. This person started out at the age of 12, and in a short 6 years, he killed people like flies. It was said that no less than 10,000 people died in his hand. It was also said that half a year ago, after he advanced to Xiantian, the first thing he did was kill his own mother, wife, and son. Then he changed his name to Li Yaling. Only recently did he restrain himself a little. However, the people he killed were all martial artists and spirit masters. His actions were unrestrained. Everywhere he went, as long as he was in the mood, he would kill people as a sacrifice to his sword. Lian Fan was also puzzled. When he heard what was said, his expression changed. He didn't have much of a reaction to the name Li Yaling, but he had an intense reaction to the name Li Yunhong. Green veins popped out on his hands and neck. His eyes shone brightly, like he was trying his best to suppress his raging emotions. Zhong Shou was also shocked. Killing no less than 10,000 people, killing his mother and wife. There was actually such a vicious person in the world? Just from the sound of it, one felt that he was really strong. If he really had such a vicious belief, and what he believed in was the killing path, then this Li Yaling's strength was most probably extremely strong. Speaking of which, although his martial path was said to be compatible with hundreds of schools of thought, he hadn't merged in any of these bloodthirsty and evil paths. His expression slowly turned serious. Zhong Shou's eyes showed that he was deep in thought. Then this Li Yaling is already at the martial ancestor realm? At most, he is at the peak of Xiantian. Li Yunyang shook her head slightly. Looking at Zhong Shou's serious expression, for some reason, she felt a little happy. When she spoke, she unknowingly returned to her mocking tone. However, the number of martial ancestors that died under his sword is already 20. Although Rin Xianchou and the other two are not bad in front of him, they are nothing. This person offended a few Xuanwu ancestors in the past and was saved by the Yunxia Mountain Lord. Since then, he has been protected by Yunxia Mountain. However, he is arrogant and doesn't like to be restricted. In these few years, he has only helped Yunxia Mountain a few times. Even if Yunxia Mountain has a backup plan, it probably won't be him. As she said that, Li Yunyang coldly stared at Zhong Shou, her eyes filled with disdain. The prince hides his strength and his sword path is really strong. However, you better pray that the person that the Yunxia Mountain Lord sends isn't him. With your little ability, he can kill you like a dog. Before she finished, a laugh broke out in the forest. Thank you for thinking so highly of me. However, this time you have guessed wrongly. Today, the person who came is me, Li Yaling. That voice was filled with the immaturity of a teen and also the magnetism of an adult. However, when she heard it, she felt that it was really sharp. Li Yunyang's breathing stopped, even her heart nearly stopped. She bit her lips and looked towards where the voice came from, only to see a blood-robed teen step out of the forest. Around 18 years old, his face was unnaturally red like he was having a high fever. His eyes were sometimes crazed and sometimes incomparably cold. He had a few scented bags on his body, which should have been the smell. However, when the smell spread over, it was a pungent smell of blood. Li Yaling first looked at the corpse of the giant eagle and regretfully shook his head. I spent so much effort to find a spirit beast, and it died just like that. What a waste. Do you know how difficult it is for us martial artists to find a protector spirit beast like Spirit Masters? How big of a price do we have to pay? His expression was filled with regret. Then, his eyes turned maniacal as he looked at Zhong Shou with a burning gaze. However, it isn't much. Today, the most fortunate thing for me is to meet you, Zhong Shou. I feel that as long as I kill you, it is enough to kill 3,000 people. It is enough to compare to my wife and children. Li Yaling can kill less people. Isn't that a good thing? Zhong Shou smiled lazily, squinting his long and narrow phoenix eyes. He didn't want to speak to this person. For someone like Li Yaling, who was so heartless, it was likely that he had some mental problems. Talking to these people was just a waste of time. Although he killed people without blinking, he had a reason for doing so. However, this person did it based on his own interest. He didn't purely use killing to prove his Tao, but to merge his entire person into the killing Tao. No matter what, a battle was unavoidable today, so why speak more? The sword in his hand shone with a lightning glow. Li Yaling's eyes also flashed with an icy blue light. A blood-colored sword suddenly rose into the air. Li Yaling chuckled and took a step forward. Then, he seemed to have transformed into a wolf, bringing with him vast killing intent as he flashed forward. His speed was several times faster than when Zhong Shou killed Ren Qianqiu. When he looked, he was 300 feet away, but before he could blink, he was already 2 inches away from Zhong Shou. They were pretty much face to face. A blood-colored arc swept over. Lian Fan's pupils constricted. He was unable to react in time. As for Li Yunyang, she clenched her fists, suppressing her nervous heart. Just as the two of them thought that Zhong Shou was going to die, another black sword light rose up from the side of Zhong Shou's waist. It didn't rely on human strength, rising into the air and stabbing toward Li Yaling's neck. The sword's speed was also extremely quick, and it was extremely nimble, stabbing in from the inside of the blood-colored arc. Li Yaling's expression changed slightly, and he retreated without hesitation, holding the blood sword horizontally in front of his neck. With a ding, the black spiritual sword bounced to the side. Then, an explosive roar spread out from the side. A giant silver bear suddenly appeared by the side of Zhong Shou. It opened its bloody mouth, and its 2 rows of nail-like sharp teeth bit over. At this moment, Li Yunyang looked as if she was already dead. To be able to drive a sword in the air and control a grade 4 spirit beast, this was obviously the skill of a spirit master. Her mind moved, and she finally remembered the few spiritual talismans that were burning before Zhong Shou killed Ren Qianqiu. Why didn't she notice it then? This Gantian mountain prince was not only a grade 8 mythic master, but he was also an out-of-body realm spirit master. Chapter 122. Within the space that was wrapped up by numerous threads, a ball of flame was surging, burning the red spider silk that was growing continuously. The fire-colored sword energy stabbed into the invisible barrier, giving out a sizzling sound. However, it was unable to totally pierce through. At this moment, Xianyuan Iren had bitten her lower lip open, her face was sunken like ice, and she was extremely weak. The golden needles that were stabbed into the major acupoints around her body were shaking. Only those 2 cold star-like eyes were still as cold as the edge of a blade, as resolute as before. Yuan Ding smiled helplessly and shook his head. A bright moon suddenly rose above his head, giving out a cold glow. In just that instance, it caused the fire around Xianyuan Iren to be suppressed by a large amount. Just as he was about to speak, his brows furrowed as he looked towards the south. That Ren Qianqiu's aura seems to have disappeared? How quick! Following which he felt that something wasn't right. Yuan Ding's expression changed, his face filled with shock and confusion. Ren Qianqiu's aura had not been withdrawn after the matter had been resolved. Instead, it had completely disappeared from his spiritual perception. It was clean and did not leave behind a single trace. A moment ago, it started to explode, and a moment later, it was totally gone. At the same time, another aura that appeared and disappeared abruptly caused him to be alarmed as well. Xianyuan Iren's eyes were filled with confusion and anxiousness. Senior brother, no matter if that Ren Qianqiu is dead or alive, the matter over there has already ended. Why aren't you letting me go? Do you want me to hate you for the rest of my life? This, Yuan Ding hesitated. Just as he was hesitating and unable to make a decision, his expression changed once more. His eyes were filled with shock as he took in a deep cold breath. Who is this? What a thick killing intent! Suddenly, he seemed to have realized something as Yuan Ding shook his head solemnly. Sorry, junior sister. Since this person personally attacked, there must have been an accident over there. This person is murderous and has gone mad. Although I can control him, I may not be able to protect you. Junior sister should just stay here and wait for the outcome. Xianyuan Iren was startled. In the next moment, her expression changed. That crazy person came? That 100,000 blood killer Li Yunhong from Yunxia Mountain? That's him. Yuan Ding nodded slightly. His gaze was also incomparably complicated as he smiled helplessly. However, he has changed his name. You should call him Li Yaling. Xianyuan Iren didn't say anything else, gritting her teeth. Suddenly, he took out a red pill from the small heaven and earth bag. Without waiting for Yuan Tian to react, he slapped it into his mouth. In just an instant, his face was dyed with a layer of red. The porcelain-like skin all over his body was actually cracking open with traces of blood. However, the power of the sword was several times stronger. With just a few sword strikes, 80% of the threads were sliced apart. The invisible barrier also seemed to be burning. Yuan Dan, who was behind them, opened his mouth in surprise. He wanted to stop them, but it was too late. After a long while, it turned into a bitter laugh. Minor burning origin pill, why would Master give this to you? Junior martial sister, why do you have to do this? With Li Yaling around, how could Zhong Shou have any chance of survival? Junior martial sister, if you rush over now, not only would it be useless but you might even lose your life. Seeing Xianyuan Iren not bother, Yuan Dan thought about it for a moment before casting a spell, causing the area covered by the 1,000-thread cage to shrink by a few times. Then, with a flash, he appeared beside Xianyuan Iren. Waving his sleeves, a ball of dark and cold soul power surged out. After it spread out, it instantly stretched out like vines, wrapping towards Xianyuan Iren from all directions. His eyes, however, were fixed on the south. He was a little surprised. That deceitful sword Rin Qianqiu, mist sword Xiejun, rage sword Yun Tao were all famous for many years and weren't weak. The former comprehended the strength of the martial path, and could break through to the martial ancestor realm at any moment. Just now, who was it that attacked? He actually dealt with the three of them so quickly. He also felt pity that he offended that 100,000 blood killer Li Yaling. This person was really unlucky. Unfortunately, the maid beside Xianyuan Iren was most probably going to die. At this moment, in the dense forest 60 miles away, Li Yaling's head was covered in cold sweat. The blood sword slashed out diagonally, blocking the path of the silver bear. He saw a silver light appear at the center of the silver bear's brows. Li Yaling's body retreated once more, crazily retreating towards the dense forest behind him. That blood-colored sword light pierced out once more. It was extremely dangerous. Only then did he push aside the silver awl. Then, his field of vision was filled with Zhong Shou's body as well as a cold glowing sword tip. It was extremely sharp and swift to the extreme. The moment it entered his eyes, it was already inches away. Purple lightning flashed. In that instance, the tip of the lightning-toothed sword seemed to have become the only source of light in this dense forest. It caused the morning glow that appeared in the sky and the moon that hadn't disappeared yet to shine. It was like the entire world was only left with this sword in front of him. Li Yaling's eyes opened wide. Then, the meridians in his right wrist exploded. Numerous blood seemed to have a life of its own as it wrapped towards the blood sword. A sword flashed out, and with a light ding, just as it was about to pierce through his brain, the lightning-toothed sword was pushed aside. Then, in an instant, the sword was like rain, the sword attack sweeping back. The close-to-crazy blood-colored sword shadow seemed like it wanted to slice this half-monster teen into millions of pieces. Zhong Shou couldn't help but laugh in pity, his left hand forming another seal. A cloud of mist immediately gathered around his body and shrouded him. The sword attack of his body also became indiscernible. Within the blood-colored sword shadow, it moved about unpredictably. Then, just as his body was about to be swallowed by the bloodlight, that black wave sword that was pushed aside once more pierced through the air. It stabbed in from the most unbelievable angle. The sword attack was mysterious and indiscernible, giving one a feeling like the dead Rin Qianqiu had come back to life. It was even much more cunning than this deceitful sword. That blood-colored sword shadow suddenly stopped. Li Yeling scoffed coldly, his body retreating once more, avoiding the giant silver bear that was pouncing over. The tip of his foot tapped as he flew up. Then, numerous blood-colored sword lights crazily charged down once more. Only at this moment did Li Yunyang come back to her senses from the shock. Her mind was at a loss once more as she unconsciously looked forward. The speed at which the two figures moved from time to time was extremely fast. In just a short period of time, they had already switched between offense and defense more than 10 times. Li Yeling's sword attack was simple and direct, but it was like it was born to kill. Although it didn't have any changes, it was more swift and tough to block than any exquisite sword technique. Zhong Shou stood in front of the blood-colored sword shadow, like a lone boat in a storm, moving up and down with the waves. However, he didn't show any signs of weakness. Even if the sword light was heavy and the waves surged, it couldn't cause this lone boat to be in danger of capsizing. Sometimes spiritual spells, sometimes sword technique. Sometimes he drove the sword, sometimes he controlled the spirit beast. He was always able to forcefully suppress Li Yeling's rising killing intent and aura at the most appropriate time. That blood-colored killing sword was like it was wrapped up by numerous chains, unable to spread out. Looking at Zhong Shou's calm and collected body, Li Yunyang's fists couldn't help but clench tightly. Even when Zhong Shou killed Rin Qianqiu and Xie Jun in dozens of breaths, she wasn't as shocked as she was now. It wasn't because of Zhong Shou's out-of-body realm cultivation, but because this Gantian mountain prince was actually able to compete with one of the most outstanding talents in the world, one who was recognized by the world as a candidate for the ascended realm. They fought tit for tat, not falling into a disadvantageous position at all. In that instance, her impression of Zhong Shou was totally flip. She didn't feel like she was weak and useless anymore. Only the elegance when the purple lightning sword was waved, the overbearingness when he killed the deceitful sword with one sword, the viciousness when he chopped off Rin Qianqiu's head. There was also that unbelievable and undeniable strength. All of it was mixed together and imprinted in the deepest part of her heart. His face was still as handsome and delicate as ever. However, at this moment, in front of her eyes, it didn't seem weak at all. It seemed soft but was firm. Under that gentleness was an unparalleled sharpness. Once it shone, it would cause the 5 continents to feel cold. Li Yunyang couldn't help but take a step forward. However, she suddenly heard a cold scoff. Looking towards where the voice came from, she saw Yan Fan looking over with a cold gaze. He didn't bother about the person who was in the midst of an intense battle. He held his sword and didn't move as he blocked in front of her. Li Yunyang frowned. Then, she heard a cling as the 2 swords clashed. She instantly turned her head and was attracted by the battle that had just ended, only to see the 2 of them split up and both of them retreated. Zhong Shou jumped up and stood on the treetop, looking down from above. As for Li Yeling, he slid back 200 feet and half knelt below. Good sword technique, really good sword technique. Be it your martial path or your sword driving technique. They are both terrifyingly strong. You didn't disappoint me. Li Yeling laughed maniacally, a wound opened up on his face. However, it made him even more excited. My estimations might have been wrong. Killing you alone is worth 10,000. No. It should be 20,000. Killing you would allow me to comprehend the killing sword intent. Zhong Shou shook his head and didn't reply. However, his eyes turned serious. A long-lost battle intent burned in his chest like a blazing flame. Although he didn't like Li Yeling's character, his strength was undeniably strong. He was the first enemy he had faced since he came to this world that could be called an opponent. As Li Yeling spoke, he suddenly tilted his head. His smile slowly disappeared and he scoffed coldly. It is actually a Xuanwu ancestor. Prince, your father really takes good care of you. Looking at the situation, he probably can't sit still anymore. Those people from Blazing Flame Mountain are really useless. Along with my partner, 3 martial ancestors and 4 peak Xiantian experts, they can't even block him for a moment. Forget it, there isn't much time left. This sword will decide the victor between us. Zhong Shou used his spiritual sense to sense and felt a strong aura swiftly rushing over. However, Li Yeling's suggestion was exactly what he wanted. His lips curling up, Zhong Shou didn't think much and nodded his head slightly, the sword in his hand pointing downwards. Okay. With this sword, you and I shall decide life and death. Chapter 123. Okay. With this sword, you and I will decide life and death. The moment Zhong Shou's words landed, the dense forest became even more solemn and solemn. A cold killing intent spread all around. Li Yunyang's pupils constricted, and Lian Fan couldn't help but be distracted. When Li Yeling heard that, he laughed out loud. What a good life and death battle! I am confident that I can beat you now, but I might not be able to take your life. On the contrary, the prince is really confident and wants to chop off my head here. That's good, then you and I will decide life and death here. Samuraim's eyes were cold, and he didn't reply. He only used his mind to control the black wave sword to circle to his side. He waved his sleeves, causing the sword body to be covered in a layer of silver. In a breath, Little Gold's body had totally wrapped up the spiritual weapon. As a result, the sword blade became even more tenacious and sharp, and it also became more agile. The battle intent in his chest was slowly suppressed, leaving only pure killing intent. He had always been a person who loved to waste his energy and didn't like to appreciate others. He also wouldn't feel lonely when facing an expert. He always felt that the best enemy should lie in the mud and not know how to speak. If the enemy could still walk, then he would think of a way to kill him with one sword and personally send him to his grave. Especially a lunatic like Li Yeling, he wouldn't allow him to leave his sight alive. In less than 300 feet of space, it was like there were 2 similar intents clashing and exchanging blows. Zhong Shou stepped on the treetop, his body swaying along with the branches, swaying up and down. When he activated the energy swallowing technique, the tree beneath him actually swiftly withered. There was no life at all, and numerous dried leaves fell to the ground. It also slowly spread, and within 100 feet, all the grass and trees turned a grayish-yellow color. The lightning-toothed sword in his hand actually gave off a thread of sword energy, and its aura rose step by step. Looking down from above, it was as if he was a king looking down on ants. Li Yeling's expression also became more and more serious, his killing intent boiling. His aura became sharper and sharper, and his cheeks became redder and redder. However, from the beginning to the end, he remained motionless and did not move for a long time. Li Yunyang felt her heart tighten. She knew that although the 2 of them had yet to truly fight, the situation was even more dangerous. Using the momentum of the martial Dao to attack and defend, he did his best to increase his chances of victory. What shocked her the most was that Li Yeling, who had been famous for many years and was known as the 100,000 blood killer, whose name caused people's expressions to change, was actually unable to gain the upper hand. On the contrary, Zhong Shou, who was high up in the treetops, seemed to be suppressing him. At this moment, Li Yunyang's feelings were extremely complicated. If Li Yeling won, with his personality, she and Lian Fan wouldn't be able to survive. However, he did not want to see this Zhong Shou really have the strength to kill Li Yeling. If that happened, he would not be able to survive either. Just as he was feeling conflicted, Li Yeling's body suddenly flashed backward. He didn't advance and instead retreated. Like an invisible red shadow, he flew to the side of a carriage. He waved the blood sword in his hand, and a several feet long blood-colored sword light directly sliced off the necks and heads of the Windrider foals who were caught off guard. Blood splattered everywhere. Li Yeling's killing path sword aura also increased to the maximum. However, his brows were filled with shock. Zhong Shou, who was on the treetops, actually didn't take the chance to chase. He still held his sword and stood coldly in the distance. After being slightly startled, Li Yeling did not hesitate at all. His entire body soared into the air. The blood-colored sword light converged and expanded. With lightning speed, it traversed tens of feet of space and charged towards the treetop. Just as it was halfway there, his wrists exploded once more. Large amounts of blood wrapped around the sword. The 40-feet-long blood-colored sword energy instantly increased to 70 feet long. The aura was vast and bloody, like this sword could kill all living beings. Agitated by this sword aura, Zhong Shou's eyelids unknowingly twitched. In the next moment, he stabilized his breathing and calmed his heart down. Apart from the excitement of fighting a strong enemy, his heart was like a clear mirror, calm and unperturbed, reflecting the world. Everything in front of him seemed to have suddenly stopped. All of Li Yeling's sword paths and all the possible changes were reflected in his heart. Just as that blood-colored sword energy slashed 40 feet in front of him, Zhong Shou suddenly spat out a shocking roar. Out-of-body kill! A ball of Yin energy instantly charged up from his head. Taking advantage of the momentum, he waved the black wave sword and stabbed down. There were no changes like clouds and mist, only extreme sharpness and swiftness. Before he even got close, he could feel that just the remnant strength was enough to cause his soul to nearly scatter. There was also the extremely strong vital energy of a Xiantian expert. Zhong Shou laughed coldly in his mind. The essence energy that he had swallowed surged out and protected his body. This sword. He went all out, his sword attack also going all out to cut off all paths of retreat, such that there was no way out. Kung! Purple lightning flashed, wrapping around the silver sword body as it struck down. It smashed into the blood shadow. It intertwined with the blood-colored sword light, spinning and mixing. Occasionally, it drew out many mysterious trajectories, like there was no hole it couldn't enter as it stabbed into the depths of the blood-colored sword light. The two swords struck numerous times in an instant, unable to stop. In a breath, the trees and branches within 300 feet were all sliced into pieces. In the mud below, there were more than 10 deep sword marks. Cold sweat seeped out from Li Yeling's forehead. He only felt that with each sword strike, a portion of the energy on the sword body was being forcefully sucked away. Zhong Shou's soul became dimmer and dimmer under the light of the rising sun. In just a few breaths, the purple and red sword images in the air were showing signs of weakening, unable to continue. Li Yunyang relaxed when she saw this, but also felt dejected. She knew that the battle between the two of them would most likely end in a draw. However, at least she would be able to keep her life. However, although this Zhong Shou didn't manage to kill Li Yeling, just the fact that he was able to use his soul to drive the sword and force back the 100,000 Bloodkiller meant that he was one of a kind in the entire Donglin Cloud continent. As expected, in just a short moment, Li Yeling's blood-colored sword image had reached its peak and had no more energy left to change. He let out a slightly regretful heh. The sword light suddenly increased again, but his figure decisively floated backwards. The purple lightning around Zhong Shou's soul was also disappearing. Under the light of the sun, the entire ball of Yin's soul seemed like it was about to melt. He also felt a burning sensation in his spiritual soul, as if it was burning. His heart was still as cold as a blade. His killing intent didn't decrease, as determined as before. Just as Li Yeling's body retreated several feet, Zhong Shou's soul suddenly increased once more. This life and death sword, he was waiting for the moment when the two of them couldn't continue anymore. Slash! Within his soul ocean, the few true spiritual charms that he had just formed suddenly burned, turning into threads of pure soul power, gathering into his dried-up soul ocean whirlpool. That silver sword image suddenly shook. It followed an extremely mysterious and indescribable trajectory, gliding over in front of Li Yaling's disbelieving eyes. With a spin, an incomparably young head soared into the air and fell to the ground. The bloody light surged and fell like rain, dyeing a large area of the grassland blood-red. Li Yunyang below was totally stunned, her heart pounding once more. Did this Zhong Shou not want to live anymore? He was obviously in danger, but he still wanted to kill? Wasn't he afraid that his soul would collapse and he wouldn't be able to return to his body? Following which an extremely deep and unreal feeling rose up in her heart. Li Yaling, that 100,000 blood killer Li Yaling, died just like that? This 13-year-old Zhong Shou, who everyone thought had a dual meridian body and couldn't cultivate, used his soul to control the sword and cut off his head in one sword? Lian Fan was also completely stunned. His expression was somewhat perplexed as he turned around and looked in front of him. Zhong Shou's soul was originally so thin that it was about to collapse. However, after killing Li Yaling, the purple lightning appeared once more. Under the shine of the sun, it was totally unharmed. In a flash, he had already returned to the bottom of the tree, where his body was being supported by the giant bear's hands. His brain instantly felt an intense pain. Zhong Shou barely managed to hold on. Following which, his right hand formed a seal and kept the demon eye silver bear back into his sleeve. However, when he spread out his divine sense again, his heart skipped a beat. Weird, that person just now actually disappeared without a trace. He left so quickly. That tyrannical aura, which should have been less than 3 miles away, had already disappeared without a trace. In his spiritual sense, there were no traces at all. It came suddenly, and it left abruptly as well. Zhong Shoxin was slightly confused, frowning as he thought about it. He shook his head and walked to the side of Li Yaling's corpse. The eyes of the head were still wide open, furiously staring forward like he had died with his eyes wide open. However, the life aura had totally disappeared. 100,000 blood killer, killing his wife and mother. This fellow's killing path is really amazing. His strength was so strong that no one below the martial ancestor realm could be his opponent. Zhong Shou was slightly emotional and felt really weird. With this person's sword technique, he grasped the massacring sword path. With the killing path's killing path, he just needed 5 to 6 years to break through to the ascended realm. A few years later, when the spiritual wave rose, he would soar into the heavens and even have a chance to step into the celestial realm. Why was he so unknown in the future? Why hadn't he heard of him? However, it was really dangerous just now. Victory and defeat was just a thin line away. This Li Yaling was just a little bit away from causing him to die. That day in the Blood Valley, he had gone all out in that battle. However, he didn't even bother to ask for the name of that Xiantian master. He was far from the threat that Li Yaling gave him. The moment he killed this person, Zhong Shou felt that his grasp of the sword path had become much clearer. The standard of this battle was actually far lower than his original realm. However, they were on the same level, fighting with an opponent of the same level. Life and death, victory and defeat were decided in one sword. Just in that instant, the tempering of his mind was comparable to nearly a year of cultivation of his mental state. Chapter 124. Unfortunately, this person's luck isn't good. If we met then, he might have given me an even bigger surprise. Li Yaling cultivated the massacring sword path, while Zhong Shou was using these close-to-death battles to train his sword. Between the two, although they were different in nature, they both killed countless people. They also needed numerous experts to sacrifice to their sword path. If this Li Yaling could enter the Ascended Realm or even the Martial Ancestor Realm in 10 years, he would be able to fight with him. The benefits it would give him would be even greater. As for whether or not he would lose and die, that wasn't within his consideration. In his last life, in the real world and the virtual world, tens of thousands of battles had caused him to develop a confidence that was close to arrogance. His sword was unstoppable, undefeatable, and undefeatable. It could slay and destroy everything. His sigh was so soft that it couldn't be heard. Li Yunyang, who was not far away, flushed red when she heard that. She only felt her cheeks burning like someone had viciously slapped her. She only felt that all the embarrassing things in the first 20 years of her life added together weren't as embarrassing as today. He was just gleefully treating Zhong Shou as a person who was definitely going to die, talking to Rin Qianqiu and the other two. She personally saw the 3 of the Yunxia 7 swords die one by one in the hands of Zhong Shou. She didn't want Zhong Shou to be gleeful, and started to brag about Li Yaling. Then, she saw a peak battle that could shock Donglin Cloud Continent. Just now, she saw the head of this 100,000 blood killer Li Yaling get chopped off by Zhong Shou with one sword. The prince hid his strength really well, and his sword path is really strong. However, you better pray that the person that Yunxia Mountain Lord sends isn't Li Yaling. With your little ability, he can kill you like a dog. Those words not long ago were still ringing in her ears. Thinking about it now, Li Yunyang suddenly had the urge to dig a hole in the ground and crawl into it. It wasn't wrong to say that Li Yaling's luck was too bad. Zhong Shou didn't bother about her, thinking back for a long time before remembering a spell in his memory. He immediately formed a seal with his hands, and then 2 blue lights appeared in his eyes. Everything in his field of vision was instantly pulled closer. Li Yunyang's face instantly became the size of a millstone in his eyes. Zhong Shou turned his head in disgust and started to pay attention to the direction of Chu Shui and that spirit master. However, his field of vision was pulled closer, and everything within a few miles was clearly imprinted in his eyes. So this is the spirit master's eye expansion technique. It's a pity that the trees are blocking my view and I can't see it clearly. I remember that technique, to use to the return to Sun Realm, or with a spiritual artifacts help return to the Sun Realm. Suppressing his eyes on the forest, Zhong Shou's return, and Zhong Shou TTT. TTTTSSS. TTTTTST. He saw that Chu Shui's body was like a cat circling around an altar, dodging between a few grade 3 spirit beasts. The rising moon lion hiding at the side actually didn't attack. At this moment, Chu Shui didn't seem to be in a bad state. Every time a spell attacked, it would be a step ahead. Before it spread out and used its power, it would break its source. It was just like the method he used to kill Qi Shao a few months ago. However, at that time, he relied on his deep talisman path attainment. What Chu Shui relied on was her shocking intuition. However, there were many times when she made mistakes, and she was only able to destroy 30% of the spells. However, Chu Shui was always able to safely dodge at the last moment. She forced the spirit master within the spell altar to break out in a cold sweat. As time went on, Chu Shui's movements became more and more familiar. Zhong Shou's lips curled up. As expected, he didn't catch those sparrows for nothing. Unfortunately, the time was short and she hadn't truly trained them. Shaking his head, Zhong Shou kept the seal and dispersed the eye expansion technique. He didn't need to analyze, and he knew that Chu Shui had already lost. However, when he thought about it for a moment, he stopped his intention to help. Since he wanted to develop this little girl into a protector that he could rely on, then he had to be more vicious. Anyways, with the rising moon lion taking care of her, her life wouldn't be in danger. To be able to use this person to train Chu Shui's skills was a fortunate thing. Putting down his worries, Zhong Shou looked forward. Reaching out with his hand, He sucked the blood sword that fell to the ground into his hand with a spiral force. There weren't any signs of evil path technique. Apart from a fishy smell, there was no vengeful energy, etc. However, it was filled with killing intent. The moment he held the sword in his hand, a maniacal killing intent rose up in Zhong Shou's mind. A red glow appeared in his eyes, and he was slightly distracted. In that instant, Zhong Shou felt like he had experienced Li Yaling's entire life, a full 14 years of sword path cultivation. Trained in the sword at 4, killed at 8, killed 10,000 people at 16, breaking through to Xiantian. At 17, he killed his wife and mother, killing his own son. These memories were really blurry, but they all came from this blood sword. The mental imprint that Li Yaling left struck Zhong Shoxin's mind. Kill, 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 kill. Still kill 100,000 and I'll be invincible. Kill 1,000,000 and I can prove the end of the killing sword. That intent was really strong, but Zhong Shou scoffed coldly. In just a moment, his eyes regained clarity. He was shocked. This sword had actually killed 10,000 people, killing his mother and wife. Who knows how Li Yaling managed to do that? 10,000 people standing in a row for him to kill would take a few days. So it is the accumulating sword technique of sword cultivators. Who knows where this Li Yaling learned how to improve it? Even martial cultivators can cultivate it. That's not right. This Li Yaling should have cultivated some soul power. However, he didn't pay much attention to this matter. Zhong Shou suddenly pointed at the blood sword. In the next moment, he felt a thought that was even more tyrannical than before. It was resisting the invasion of his soul power, clashing with his mind. You dare to control my mind with such a small method? Break. Samuraim's eyes shone brightly. Coming to this era, what he wasn't afraid of was such a battle of intents. With a slight thought, the mental imprint on the blood sword started to shatter. As for this blood sword, it seemed like it had totally lost its essence, its light dimming. It wiped out the last bit of intent within the sword. Zhong Shou casually tossed it to the side. The sword's material was not bad, but unfortunately, it killed too many people and wasn't suitable to be Little Gold's food. Which was why after destroying Li Yaling's mental imprint and ending the possibility of this item being refined into an evil weapon, Zhong Shou wasn't interested anymore. He used his mind to search the corpse. Zhong Shou's brows furrowed once more. He's someone who has killed 20 martial great masters. Isn't he a little too poor? Why isn't there a single beast crystal? Exclaiming in surprise, Zhong Shou suddenly picked up the bag at the person's waist and took out an item. It was a fist-sized white bead. Taking a close look, he couldn't help but smile. This was like sending charcoal in the snow, getting whatever he wanted. The other 3 obviously didn't have anything on them. Zhong Shou spread out threads of his mind and searched carefully. In the end, he could only shake his head in disappointment. There were only a few bottles of healing pills and some grade 3 beast crystals, which made him unable to raise the thought of searching their corpses. On the contrary, the situation of the woman beside him made him slightly interested. Turning his head, he saw Li Yunyang's fists clench tightly, her face ashen white as she stopped several feet away. Who knows if it was because of the killing intent that exploded out from him, but her beautiful legs were trembling slightly. However, she tried her best to suppress it, gritting her teeth. Her gaze was fierce, but she was weak inside. Zhong Shou's lips curled up as his interest was piqued. He was delighted in his heart, but on the surface, he acted sinister, coldly looking at Li Yunyang. Li Yunyang, should I kill you now? Or should I let you live? Li Yunyang's body shuddered, a deep sense of helplessness entered her body. Her chin was raised high and her body was perfectly straight. She knew that she had no chance of surviving. This person was obviously an out-of-body realm spirit master, and even the 100,000 blood killer Li Yaling wasn't his match. However, he could bear with it till now, making everyone think that he was trash. There had to be a reason why he did that. She knew so many secrets today, but she wasn't someone he trusted. Along with what she said before, she had no chance of living. She wanted to say, "If you want to kill me, then kill me. Why are you talking so much nonsense?" Zhong Shou hesitated and sighed. "You are after all Iren's maidservant. Even if she wants to deal with you, she should do it herself. If I attack, it won't be appropriate. It is really tough." Hope rose up in Li Yunyang's heart. His heart, which had been prepared to face death, suddenly loosened. Alright, there was also Little Miss. With Little Miss here, this Zhong Shou definitely wouldn't kill her. Her heart sank once more. She already knew so many of his secret. This person was so vicious, so how would he not kill her? Li Yunyang's expression kept changing. Sometimes it was dark, sometimes it was sunny. Suddenly her eyes shone with a glimmer of hope, and then they calmed down. Zhong Shou felt more and more interested as he swept around. Suddenly, he stretched out his hand and grabbed a sunflower that had floated over from the dense forest. "If I don't kill you, it will spoil my plans. However, if I kill you, I won't be able to answer to Iren. Why don't I use the petals of this sunflower to decide your life? One petal means death, two petal means life. Single, double, single, double, single." While counting, Zhong Shou plucked the petals. Li Yunyang's heart couldn't help but tighten up once more. She was really nervous. Along with the double petal, it was like she was on a roller coaster. Her eyes opened wide as she tried her best to deduce the number of petals. However, a portion of it was blocked by Zhong Shou's hand and couldn't be seen clearly. When the number of petals slowly decreased, Li Yunyang's heart turned ice-cold once more. There were only 5 petals left. It was actually single. Just as she was feeling despair, Zhong Shou suddenly clenched his fist and crushed the flower into pieces. He teased, "You really believed it? Woman, you're really stupid." Li Yunyang was startled. Only after a short while did she realize that Zhong Shou was playing with her from the start. From start to finish, he didn't have much killing intent. Unfortunately, she was too focused on his aura and didn't notice it at all. At this moment, Lian Fan couldn't help but laugh out loud. Zhong Shou's face didn't have any mocking expression. He only felt disgusted by this woman. If it wasn't for Iren, he would have casually killed her. Shaking his head, Zhong Shou looked to the side. He saw Chu Shui giggling as she walked over with a head. Chapter 125. When Xianyuan Iren rushed back to the empty space, she saw Zhong Shou lazily sitting beside the fire. The surrounding 1,000 feet was in a mess. The place where the fire was lit had been changed to a cleaner place. Li Yunyang's head was lowered like a little wife who was being bullied, carefully massaging Zhong Shou's legs. Xianyuan Iren couldn't help but be shocked. Li Yunyang didn't like Zhong Shou. During these few days, she had mocked him a lot, wishing that her fiancé would just die. With her identity as a Xiantian expert, she was actually serving Zhong Shou so respectfully without any unhappiness. It was really shocking and hard to understand. Was this Sister Yunyang crazy? Or was her body taken over by someone? Such thoughts flashed in her head, but Xianyuan Iren didn't have time to worry about it. The moment she returned, she started to look around. When the corpses of Rin Qianshou and the other 2 entered her eyes, her pupils constricted. Then, the other head, which looked even younger, entered her line of sight. Xianyuan Iren instantly sucked in a deep cold breath. Deceitful sword Rin Qianshou, mist sword Xiejun, rage sword Yun Tao, and 100,000 blood killer Li Yaling. Yunyang, who killed them? Li Yunyang rolled her eyes but didn't dare to reply. Instead, she looked towards Zhong Shou, her eyes filled with a request for instructions. Zhong Shou gave a carefree smile, his expression filled with helplessness and confidence. Who else could it be? Other than me, who else here can kill them? Just as he was about to shake his body, and reveal his overbearing aura to explain things clearly, Xianyuan Iren looked at him with disdain. Xianyuan Iren's eyes were filled with disdain as she looked over. Her gaze seemed to be saying, with just you, can you kill them? She shook her head, her tone solemn. You still have the mood to joke? I wonder which expert did it just now? When I was 60 miles away, I sensed a Xuanwu ancestor. Zhong Shou sighed helplessly, only feeling that all the energy in his body had been used up. His heart was conflicted once more. All of a sudden, he was too lazy to explain and didn't want to waste energy to prove anything. Xianyuan Iren and Zhong Shou kept silent. As for Chu Shui and Lian Fan, they were all silent. Her brows furrowed as she directly looked towards Li Yunyang. Sister Yunyang, you speak. Li Yunyang's body shook as she hesitated. She glanced at Zhong Shou, who was expressionless. Li Yunyang, she shook her head. Miss, I didn't see anything, I didn't hear anything. Xianyuan Iren was startled once more, her turned cold, she scoffed coldly. Li, come with me. I have something, I talk to you alone. She didn't give Li Yunyang any chance to reject. Directly turning around and walking towards the carriage she borrowed from Lingyun's sect. When she saw the 6 Windrider foals in front of the carriage, Xianyuan Iren's body stopped once more, a pained expression appearing on her face. She didn't hesitate to enter the carriage. At this moment, Li Yunyang surprisingly didn't immediately follow. Instead, she pitifully looked at the half-demon youth beside her with pleading eyes. Zhong Shou scoffed coldly, taking the sword sheath and casually poking Li Yunyang's thigh a few times. Li Yunyang heaved a sigh of relief, running away like the wind, like there was a demon behind her. When she charged into the carriage, she saw Xianyuan Iren staring over with a dark expression. A moment later, she burst out laughing. Sister Yunyang, after all, you are a Xiantian master. Even those big sects don't dare to look down on you. Not to mention you have been by my side since I was young. Even if I marry Zhong Shou in the future, I still have to treat you like an important guest. Why do you have to massage his legs to get on his good side? If he dares to bully you, I will go pull his ear. As she said that, Xianyuan Iren's tender face turned slightly red. However, her expression was magnanimous, just a little shy. Li Yunyang's mouth felt bitter, thinking to herself that how was she really willing? This Qianquan mountain prince took revenge for the smallest grievances. His personality was like that of a demon. In the short span of 4 hours, he had tormented her with all his might. Just now, she massaged his legs to subdue him, so she had to kneel there. If she resisted, he would use his sword to torture her body. Who knows where he learned it from? She didn't feel any pain, but her body was extremely itchy, and she laughed until she went crazy. To be humiliated like that, why not just kill her? Just now, luckily, Xianyuan Iren came back early and saved her from a calamity. After massaging his legs, who knew what kind of torture she would face? Xianyuan Iren didn't feel anything, her expression turning solemn. Did you see that Xuanwu ancestor? Which one from Gantian Mountain? How did he kill Li Yaling? Li Yunyang hesitated. She wasn't willing to lie to Xianyuan Iren. Thinking about it, she shook her head. Little miss, I really didn't see the Xuanwu ancestor you mentioned. As for the specific situation, I can't say. You can't say? Xianyuan Iren muttered softly. She knew that with Li Yunyang's personality, she definitely wouldn't spout nonsense to her. Since she couldn't say, then she definitely had her reasons. She thought about it seriously. Xianyuan Iren temporarily buried these doubts in her heart. Did the person who attacked specially tell you before he left? Li Yunyang didn't speak when she heard that, thinking back to the situation not long ago. Zhong Shou didn't say anything from start to finish. Just now, he even admitted it in front of Xianyuan Iren. However, the more it was like that, the harder it was to guess his intentions. She only felt that his personality was really sinister and weird. Although he was playing with her, She couldn't be sure that he didn't have killing intent. However, this matter had something to do with little Miss's marriage. Thinking about it carefully for a moment, Li Yunyang asked with a weird expression, "Miss, if one day you find out that Prince Zhong's show isn't the trash that everyone thinks he is, and is a young genius even stronger than that 100,000 blood killer Li Yaling, what would you do?" To him, those people who wanted to kill him were like ants and weeds, jumping clowns. They weren't worth mentioning at all. "Little miss, what would you do? Why are you asking about this? How is such a thing possible?" Xian Yuan Iren smiled, not wanting to reply. However, in the next moment, she saw that Li Yunyang's eyes were really serious. She also found it weird, but she didn't think much about it, casually saying, "Isn't that better? If he really has such ability, then I can be more relaxed. However, as long as there is a day when he hasn't truly ascended to the position of Gantian Mountain Monster King, then I should go through hardships with him. Since we are husband and wife, then we should follow in life and death. Moreover, after the recruitment we should ask for the marriage to be completed. Once the marriage is settled, I will return to Pill Fountain sect to cultivate." Li Yunyang was a little dejected. She had expected such an outcome. She said weakly, "Didn't Little Miss hate this Zhong show in the past? If he doesn't need anyone to protect him, then why can't Little Miss cancel this marriage? It doesn't go against Little Miss's benevolence." Xian Yuan Iren broke out into a laugh, her face revealing a disapproving expression. "Sister Yunyang, if the prince is really a genius, then it's me who has eyes but can't see him clearly. All the more I should see him clearly. How can I use my previous impression of him to look at him? Furthermore, I didn't hate him in the past, I just didn't like being treated as a chess piece by him." Li Yunyang was still unwilling, her brows furrowing. What if he takes the initiative to cancel the marriage? Xian Yuan Iren was startled, and she started to think seriously. A moment later, her face flushed red, and she said decisively, "If it was 15 days ago, I might have agreed. However, it is impossible now. The ancients had 7 rules, and Iren didn't break any of them. How can he cancel the marriage? Let's not talk about this matter any more." Li Yunyang let out a sorrowful sigh before her heart moved. "Miss, please allow Yunyang to ask one last question. Is the mysterious moonwood brilliance method really only cured by the mysterious cloud sect's ancient cold pill? That might not be the case. The few spiritual pills recorded in the sect's medicine book can help. However, the ingredients are still lacking. I should be able to refine them, but I don't have enough time." Xian Yuan Iren shook her head and explained. The moment she said that, she felt an extremely strong dizziness strike her. She suddenly fainted on the bed. Li Yunyang was shocked, reaching out to help her up. The moment she touched Xian Yuan Iren's skin, her body shook once more, and she nearly exclaimed out loud. She only felt that her hand was ice cold, without any warmth at all. A moment later, it turned fiery hot. At the same time, Yuan Dao, who was 60 miles away, sighed, keeping the cage-like red threads around him. It retracted back into its original ball shape, but on one side there was a small hole, with some burn marks. This Grade 4 spiritual artifact thousand-thread cage is actually damaged to such an extent. He didn't feel heartache about the spiritual artifact in his hand, but he was a little moved by Xian Yuan Iren's craziness. Yuan Dao casually tossed it into his sleeves, following which he looked into the distance with a depressed and worried expression. Small energy burning pill, crazy demon needle technique. I wonder how serious Junior Sister's injuries are right now? She is lacking in both vital energy and vital energy. Will it cause the hidden problems of the mysterious moonwood brilliance method to explode? I remember that she has a few small energy replenishing pills. Did she consume them in time? Anyways, it is really tough this time. Why is Junior Sister's personality so strong? If my master and a few senior masters find out, they will skin me alive. Senior brother, you really made it tough on me. When I return, what am I going to say? However, That Zhong Shou deserves to die. In just an instant, he pushed all the blame onto the Gantian mountain prince whom he had never met. Killing intent rose up in Yuandao's heart, following which he felt confused. Xuanwu ancestor? That's not right. Long before that person rushed over, Ren Qianren and the others were already dead. Ren Qianshou and the other two had already died, and the 100,000 blood hangers had also suddenly disappeared without a trace. Who was the one who did this? Could this Xuanwu ancestor be able to kill people through space? Yuandao's brows furrowed. It seemed like that prince wasn't as simple as he thought. To solve this matter, he needed to plan carefully. Chapter 126. It was still that empty space within the dense forest. At this moment it was drizzling. The blood stains on the ground were washed away. Sly Sword Ren Qianshou, Mist Sword Xie Jun, Fury Sword Yun Tao, and 100,000 Blood Killer Li Yaling. These three are Xiantian sword masters who have the potential to enter the martial ancestor realm. Yunxia Mountain's losses this time are not small. Within the dense forest, a black-shirt person stood with his head held high. He wore a black cape and one could see his face. He was exquisite and beautiful, one couldn't tell if he was male or female. He was looking up at the treetops. What a waste! The heavens aren't helping us. This rain has washed away all the blood marks. Apart from you and me, there are at least 5 groups of people who came here before us. Even if there are any clues, we won't be able to find them. Beside him was another person who was also dressed in black. However, he didn't cover his face. His nose was really big, pretty much taking up half of his face. His eyes were shifty, making him look really wretched. His eyes flashed with viciousness, making one feel a chill down one's spine. At this moment, he was casually looking around. Aren't you following Master's orders to find the person who killed old me? Why did you come here? Although Gantian Mountain's Zongyang asked us to send the prince back. However, didn't Master think that their price was too low and rejected it a few days ago? This Gantian Mountain prince has nothing to do with us. Naturally, he has something to do with us. That handsome teen laughed coldly, walking in front of a pine tree and saying expressionlessly, "The Xiantian experts who are related to the prince were mostly near Cloud Saint City. The people of Cloud Saint City more or less know about us. Lingyun's sect wouldn't easily attack old me thinking about it. This group of people is the most likely. Does junior brother Cho Ling agree?" As he spoke, the handsome young man reached out and picked up a broken branch. After looking at the cut, he immediately sucked in a breath of cold air. Life-severing. This person's sword was so sharp. As expected from the 100,000 blood killer, Li Yaling's sword is naturally strong. That lunatic who kills without batting an eyelid. Even I was a little scared. Such a beautiful wife had been killed by him and turned into a cup of yellow soil. What a pity! Wouldn't it be nice to give it to me to play with? However, the person who killed him was even more exceptional. I wonder if it was really the black tortoise ancestor who suddenly appeared? Seeing the handsome youth remain silent, Cho Ling did not mind and began to walk around. However, senior brother Yun, what you said earlier makes a lot of sense. At that time, at least 70% of the people in the vicinity of Cloud Saint City had the qualifications to take old me's life. Perhaps they are the 4 who have already died here. He suddenly stopped and stared at Li Yaling's head, whose eyes were still wide open. Cho Ling raised his eyebrows and suddenly sneered. "You're already dead. Who are you trying to show by making such an expression? Without your life and sword, who else can you kill?" He actually raised his leg and stomped down heavily, crushing Li Yaling's head like a watermelon. But in the next moment, Cho Ling's expression suddenly changed. Sword energy? Numerous sharp energies exploded out from under his feet. Cho Ling swiftly retreated. In a breath, he was 200 feet away. However, there were still numerous wounds under his feet. His feet were also pierced with numerous wounds. He couldn't help but curse out, "This Li Yaling, why does he still want to harm others even when he's about to die?" Luckily, I reacted quickly. Something isn't right. Thinking back to the situation just now, Chou Ling instantly sucked in a cold breath. It's at his neck. It's not Li Yaling, but the person who killed him. His sword energy and sword intent were all gathered and not released, hiding for half a day. This person is really amazing. As expected from the Black Tortoise ancestor. At this moment, the youth with the surname Yun also moved. He flew to the front of Li Yaling's still perfectly preserved body and looked at the wound. A moment later, he shook his head. "No. It's not at the sword intent level. It should be at the Xiantian realm, but how is that possible? Which Xiantian expert in this world can beat 100,000 blood killers? This Li Yaling is skilled in the land galloping technique and is unparalleled in speed. If not, he wouldn't have been able to escape so many times. Who could cause him to be unable to escape?" The more he said, the more confused he got, his eyes filled with confusion. Chou Ling, who was cleaning up his wounds, was startled. If the person who killed Li Yaling was a Xuanwu ancestor, this matter wouldn't be surprising. They would only sigh at how unlucky this 100,000 blood killer was. However, if the person who attacked was just a Xiantian master, then the nature of this matter was totally different. If this matter spread out in the cloud world, not only would Donglin Cloud Continent be shocked by this news, even the Central Cloud Continent would be shocked. The name of 100,000 blood killer Li Yaling shocked not only Donglin Cloud Continent. To be able to kill this person at the Xiantian realm, wasn't this person's talent far stronger than 100,000 blood killer? The brows of that surnamed Yun frowned slightly. A moment later, he smiled, slapping out with a palm, causing Li Yaling's body to instantly turn into dust. "Junior Marshal brother, thanks to you, I've found something interesting this time. It might not have anything to do with old me, but I am really curious and have to take a look." Within the Cloud Spirit God Palace, Long Rual was riding that giant flood dragon as he flew towards a hall in the distance. This cloud palace was located at the depths of the cloud ocean. It was extremely huge, with endless clouds all around. The beauty of the scenery was unparalleled in the world. However, if one got used to seeing it every day, it was just normal. When Long Rual was 10,000 feet in front of the stone hall, he flew down from his protector's spirit beast and then walked in. Although this place was huge, there were very few people. Long Rual walked in and directly entered the stone hall. In the huge space, there were only 5 people sitting there. 4 of them were dressed in green robes, their faces were dry, their eyes closed as they sat on the left and right. Only the one at the top had a face like jade, eyes like ink. He looked really handsome, around 17 or 18 years old. At this moment, he was smiling as he looked over. "Are you curious as to why I called you over? Take a look at this." Whilst he spoke, the teen casually waved his hand and a blue light flew over. Long Rua's brows furrowed, a solemn expression appearing on his face. He waved his sleeves and a suction force spread out. He carefully caught that blue light in his hand. It was a 2-foot-long small sword, extremely sharp and cold. "It's the broken blade sword." Long Rua's brows furrowed and then he was overjoyed. He bowed towards the front and left. "Thank you, teacher and senior uncles, for your love. With this sword, my imperial sword technique will definitely become stronger." Following which he asked curiously, "Where did you get this broken blade sword? Wasn't it said that the sect searched for 200 years without any signs of it? Could this sword have been destroyed by that person?" "Your junior brother Zhu Renquang bought it. The one who found this sword was Gantian Mountain Zongsho. It was hidden in a normal black wave sword. What a surprise! To buy this sword, Renquang used 2 human pinnacle pills and a grade 5 spirit beast. Long Rua, you have to compensate him in the future. When the teen above said that, he frowned slightly. Renkwang also said that this zone show has dual meridians and is unable to cultivate. Till date, he doesn't have any internal energy. However, for this person to be able to find this sword, it is due to his luck. Long Ruo, you personally saw him and feel that he has no hope of cultivating? Not a trace of inner breath? Long Ruo was slightly shocked. He remembered that the last time they met, the Gantian mountain prince had reached the martial master realm and his foundations weren't weak. Why would junior brother Zhu Renkwang say that the kid didn't have any internal energy? Following which he didn't bother about it. Maybe this kid had totally given up hope and scattered his true chi. With a dual meridian body, cultivating the martial path was torture at every moment, so it wasn't weird for him to give up. Suppressing these doubts, Long Ruo didn't hesitate as he shook his head. I remember in the last life I told Master that this kid has hidden problems. His soul is broken and has barriers from heaven. I predict that in his life, he will at most reach the mythic master realm. As for spiritual cultivation, once he reaches the out-of-body realm, he will definitely die. If I am wrong, then dig my eyes out. The teen in the hall instantly laughed. A moment later, it turned into a regretful sigh. What a waste! This kid's personality is not bad. His martial path and talisman talents are top grade. Why is he unable to cultivate? The heavens are unpredictable and hard to predict. Long Ruo kept silent and didn't speak. For some reason, when he said those words, he felt a sense of unease. In his soul remembrance, he suddenly felt an indescribable uneasiness, as if he had done something wrong that he could not make up for. His heart trembled. That teen didn't notice the weird expression on Long Ruo's face. After sighing, his expression became solemn. A year later will be the opening of the Dragon Gate. The disciples of the various sects will gather at Dragon Gathering Mountain. Many experts of Donglin Cloud Continent will also participate. However, out of these thousands of people, only 20 will have a chance to see the martial saint image. Our sect only has you and Zhu Renkwang as the only ones we can take out. Long Ruo, you need to prepare well these few days. If you lose the face of our sect, we won't let you off so easily. This voice was like the morning bell and evening drum, causing Long Ruo to come back to his senses, instantly keeping away all his random thoughts. Facing upwards, he bowed solemnly. Long Ruo understands, I won't disappoint Master and all the senior masters. His chest couldn't help but shake. The Dragon Gate martial saint image only appeared once every 100 years. It was a stone wall personally left by a famous martial saint expert 10,000 years ago. Those who were fated to comprehend it all had huge improvements in their martial path. Although he was a spirit master, he leaned towards the sword path. The martial saint image was also important to him. He was also looking forward to the day when he could compete with the many experts of Donglin Cloud Continent. Chapter 127. Kiki, so it is barriers from heaven. You scared me, I really thought that it would be tough this time. Pretty much at the same time, within the carriage, Zhong Shou also sighed. He only felt his mind relax. His mood was unspeakably relaxed. After the battle with Li Yaling, not only did his sword path and heart realm improve, but his sword path and heart realm also improve. Under the pressure of the killing sword, the potential in Zhong Shou's body exploded out a little. Along with the Xiantian essence energy of the lightning phoenix egg, it directly turned into true energy that flowed in his body. Today, in just a day and night of cultivation, he had opened up a small portion of his 8th meridian organ chakra. A total of 13 acupoints were all opened up. All the acupoints in his body were filled up a little. This caused Zhong Shou's vital energy to greatly increase, and he finally saw that layer of obstruction. There were 3 parts of the human body that could communicate with heaven and earth. One was the navel in the stomach, which was there when one was born. If one didn't cultivate, the navel would slowly close up and be unable to absorb heaven and earth spiritual energy. The other place was below his feet, and it was called the earth gate. After opening it, one could sense the spiritual veins underground and borrow spiritual energy. One could even merge those small spiritual veins into one's body. The third was the heaven gate above one's head. Opening it meant one was an ascended ancestor. Every action had the ability to shake mountains and move the earth. Like Lei Dong, who casually slashed with a knife and left a deep mark on Mingjing Mountain. At this realm, one's destructive ability was simply too huge. Their lifespan was also thousands of years. Compared to normal people, they were like celestials, humans and ants. This was why the various sects and aristocratic families of the cloud world had an agreement that once a martial artist reached Ascended Realm, they had to put down everything and not participate in the conflicts of the 5 continents and 12 islands of the cloud world. When a martial artist cultivated, when their body chakra was completed, they had to use all the energy in their body to break open the earth gate. Drawing in the spirit of the earth, and then refining the chakra from the outside to the inside, that was the 9 meridians of the earth chakra. After the earth chakra was opened, one would break open the heaven gate. Similar to the earth chakra, one would borrow the power of the stars and the spiritual energy of the universe to cleanse the body. However, be it the earth gate or heaven gate in Zhong Shou's body, they were all blocked up and were terrifyingly thick. It was like a boulder that could not be shaken. This was the so-called barriers from heaven. Such a person would never be able to open the earth gate even if he spent his entire life. This was the worst possible scenario that he had previously estimated. However, this was only true for ordinary people. Looks like my unlucky fate didn't change for the better even after I reincarnated 10,000 years ago. In his previous life, his meridians were all shattered, and he had barriers from heaven. His current life was just as bad. He had 2 parallel meridians and a damaged soul. He also had barriers from heaven. God, how could you treat me so poorly? Zhong Shou's face did not show the slightest hint of dejection. Instead, he was in high spirits, and traces of unconcealable sharpness could be seen in his eyes. In his previous life, he spent a total of 7 years to open the earth gate and another 3 years to open the heaven gate. If it wasn't for the barriers from heaven, he wouldn't be able to enter the ascended ancestor realm at the age of 32. In his previous life, he was able to rely solely on his unkillable and indestructible tenacity to connect them. Then, in this life, what reason did he have to be stopped by such a small barrier from heaven? With this experience, the blockage of the heaven and earth gates wasn't a hindrance in his eyes. This was why, although this martial path was still tough and bumpy, Zhong Shou could only feel that the heavy stone blocks pressing down on his chest had been removed, and he didn't have any worries anymore. His thoughts were smooth, and the energy circulation in his body seemed to have become more agile. However, Zhong Shou only used his true qi to complete a few small circulations before ending his breathing. Cultivating for a day and night, even if he continued, he wouldn't be able to improve much. His 6 organs were still lacking, and his accumulation wasn't enough. There was also no need to rush to open up the organ meridians. With the barriers from heaven in front of him, this energy cultivation path couldn't be rushed. Zhong Shou opened his eyes and took out a white pearl. It was the item that he had taken from Li Yaling that day. At this moment, under the shine of the light, it seemed transparent, giving off a pure white glow. In the eyes of outsiders, it was flawless. However, in the eyes of Zhong Shou, who was an expert, he could sense that there were threads of impurities within, and it wasn't truly pure. That Li Yaling is poor, but just this item is worth 3 human pinnacle pills. Who knows where that fellow got it from? If he can merge this item into that blood sword, I won't be able to win this time. This item was called a spirit vein pearl, a really common name. It was formed from the energy of the underground spiritual veins. It could strengthen spiritual weapons and help Xiantian martial cultivators to raise their true qi cultivation and sense of the earth veins. In Zhong Shou's hand was a pure gold element spirit vein pearl. It was also a 2 meridian level, which was the so-called grade 2 gold vein pearl. The so-called 2 meridians meant that within this spirit vein pearl, there were at least 2 gold element spiritual veins sealed. Moreover, the quality was really good and there were very few impurities. If it was merged with that blood sword, it would be enough to raise it by a full grade. At that time, no matter how deep Zhong Shou's martial path cultivation was, he wouldn't be able to win. At this moment, what Zhong Shou had his eyes on was that this spirit vein pearl could be used as an external pill. That day in Cloud Saint City, Zhong Shou had unintentionally peeked at Xianyuan Iran's cultivation. The green and fire spiritual pearl floating in front of her was the so-called external pill, which was also made from spirit vein pearls. However, the quality was much higher. Just by looking at it, Zhong Shou knew that it was at least 7 wood spirit meridians and 6 fire spirit meridians. As for the one in Zhong Shou's hand, if it was used to make an external pill, it was still lacking. A spirit vein pearl had to be at least 4 meridians before it could be used as an external pill. However, he had other methods to make use of it. Although this gold element spirit vein stone is only grade 2, it is much weaker than Xianyuan Iran. It can't compare to Iran's external pill, but for me it is barely enough. Who knows if little gold can use it? Thinking about Xianyuan Iran, Zhong Shou sighed once more. His brows furrowed as he felt dejected once more. This matter was just too awkward when he thought about it, and it also made him worry. Forcing himself to focus, Zhong Shou started to arrange beast crystals within the carriage. The talisman formation was already drawn when he was at the black soil swamp and didn't need to be changed. The beast crystals he placed this time were all grade 3 and above, mostly metal element. There were also some earth element, wind element, fire element, and the rarest lightning element beast crystals. He still placed out the incense table and spell altar, placing the round little gold in the center of the incense table. Little Gold was stunned, obviously not understanding what was going on. It had consumed a lot of energy and was sleeping soundly on Zhong Shou's arm before it was grabbed. At this moment, it was jumping around like it was expressing its dissatisfaction. Zhong Shou laughed, holding the metal element spirit pearl and waving it in front of it. "Do you want it?" Little Gold's body paused for a moment before it jumped even more intensely. The thoughts it sent over were filled with eagerness and anticipation. Like it was spitting out trash, it spat out the green wind spirit pearl that it had swallowed before. Zhong Shou wasn't surprised, heavily smacking its head. "Then stay there and don't move. If you can't hold on this time, you might lose your life. At that time, even your master won't be able to save you." Who knows whether or not Little Gold understood, but when Zhong Shou's words landed, its jelly-like body laid on the incense table, not moving at all. Zhong Shou's expression became slightly solemn. He lit up 3 sandalwood incense sticks, using the incense to calm his mind. Then, with a spell, the talisman formation under his feet was activated. Threads of essence energy seeped out from the beast crystals and gathered towards Little Gold. In just a moment, its round body was once again dyed in 5 colors. Zhong Shou still used one hand to press on the top of Little Gold, using the heaven-swallowing energy conversion technique. However, this time he didn't swallow it into its body. Instead, he used the 18-cloud shocking god-destroying sword intense to smash the impurities one by one. Then, he used the world-shocking spiritual art to activate the spiral energy to twist it. After purifying it, he injected it back into Little Gold's body. This was to reduce the pressure on it, even if this little fellow was born with the ability to purify impurities in its body. However, Compared to the huge amount of essence energy it absorbed this time, it was still a little lacking. As time went on, the 5 colors on Little Gold's body became thicker and thicker. It was brightly colored and looked beautiful. Its body also swelled up by a full size, making it look chubby. Its outer skin was also extremely smooth, making it look even cuter. Zhong Shou's brows were tightly furrowed. He knew that the essence energy caused its body to swell up. At this moment, Little Gold was probably in extreme pain. Luckily, those beast crystals were shattering one by one and had reached their limit. Next, it would depend on whether or not this little fellow was able to swallow and digest the essence energy. He wouldn't be able to help anymore. Zhong Shou could only sit quietly at the side and wait. Actually, such a method was okay for spirit beasts, but for protector spirit beasts that still had their flesh bodies, it wasn't of any benefit. At the start, they might be able to swiftly improve, but as they got closer, it would be harder to improve, just like martial artists. However, at this moment, he had no choice. If he wanted to have the ability to protect his life, he had to use this method. This time, when I return to Gantian Mountain, I will settle this matter. I need to make a trip to that place. Although it won't be of any benefit to me, Little Gold and Little Ji will be able to greatly increase their strength. Oh right, with that thing, Chu Shui can increase her cultivation. As for the demon eye silver bear, it would be useless for spirit beasts to go. Just as he was thinking about it, Zhong Shou's heart suddenly moved. He looked forward, only to see threads of smoke seeping out from Little Gold's body. His brows furrowed, knowing that today's matter had succeeded. His palms sucking out all the essence energy that Little Gold wasn't able to absorb. He directly tossed it out of the window, giving out a loud explosion. Looking at the little fellow on the incense burner table, its body still hadn't shrunk, looking extremely dispirited. It was so chubby, like it was difficult for it to even move slightly. However, that 5-colored color instantly became so thin that one couldn't see it anymore. It returned to its usual silver-white color. Zhong Shou smiled, tossing the metal element spiritual vein pearl over. When it merged into Little Gold's body, instantly a sharp aura rose up within the carriage. Chapter 128. Zhong Shou smiled and took Little Gold into his hand. He felt that the little fellow's body had shrunk by a lot, but it was still in pain. Comfortingly caressing it, Zhong Shou took out some soul liquid and mixed it with spiritual ink. He drew a few calming runes on Little Gold to help it absorb energy. As expected, not long later, this little thing calmed down and laid quietly in his body. Zhong Shou closed his eyes and sent a thread of intent into Little Gold's body, only to see that the metal element spirit vein pearl was quietly lying near Little Gold's beast crystal. Threads of spiritual energy meridians were being built between the two of them. This little thing was born with the ability to mimic many things. Its body didn't have a fixed appearance and could change into many things. The spiritual energy meridians in its body were the same. This was why all the talisman weapons, spiritual artifacts, magical treasures, and even all sorts of treasures in the world. Little Gold could be used at will. As long as it mimicked the spiritual energy meridians, it would be able to perfectly guide the power of these spiritual items. This was why he might not be able to use this grade 2 metal element spirit vein pearl as an external pill. However, Little Gold could use this item as an external pill to reach the grade 4 realm. This little thing could also use the Spirit Meridian method to transfer the power of any spiritual item to its master. For example, the Wind Spirit Green Pearl in the Black Soil Swamp. With Zhong Shou's ability, he shouldn't have been able to activate this item. However, with Little Gold connecting it through a layer, he could use it as he wished. In other words, this little thing could be considered his external pill. Although power was much weaker than a true external pill, It could allow him to have a portion of the Xiantian master's ability. However, moments later, Zhong Shou frowned. The spiritual energy meridians that were being built in Little Gold's body were too simple. Thinking about it, Zhong Shou didn't hesitate to interfere. In the future, the god beast would be smarter than humans. However, at this moment it was just an octopus beast with low intelligence. Even if it mutated, it wouldn't have much intelligence. Little thing, this isn't how spirit energy veins are built. Zhong Shou used his soul power to draw lines in Xiao Jin's body. Xiao Jin was also very tame. It directly followed Zhong Shou's soul power and formed channels in its body to connect with the metal-type spirit vein pearl. All of the pipes seemed to have no pattern, but if one were to look at them from afar, they would discover that all of the spirit power veins seemed to be an extremely complicated and intricate talisman formation. Once all the tunnels were built properly, Zhong Shou's eyes lit up. The seventh metal psionic energy that seeped out of Little Gold's body also slowly dissipated. I am just a little away from being able to borrow the power of the external pill to charge to grade 4. The next time I absorb beast crystals, I need at least 20 days. Just enough. Zhong Shou calculated the time, and it was just before he returned to Gantian Mountain. He couldn't help but smile and relax. Although Little Gold was still one step away, it could already borrow a portion of the gold-attributed spiritual vein pearl's help. Zhong Shou held the little guy in one hand and pulled out his sword, only to hear a sharp chi sound as a sword energy pierced tens of feet out. One could see flames and cold mist intertwining, forming a spiral shape. There were also threads of purple lightning wrapping around it. This sword energy flashed and instantly disappeared without a trace. Zhong Shou's brows furrowed, revealing a satisfied smile. Sword energy reaching 30 feet out, this standard can be compared to a beginner Xiantian cultivator. I used the power of the gold spirit pearl to make this sword energy even sharper and sharper. Once this little thing enters grade 4, it will be able to reach 50 feet. Unfortunately, I got a metal element spirit vein pearl. If it was a water and lightning element, it would be even more overbearing. Keeping the sword, Zhong Shou waved with strength. Within the carriage, there was a slight ringing sound. The surrounding air seemed to be rippling. Even without using my lightning traveling spirit bone, it seems to have 17,000 kilograms of strength, just a little bit away from Xiantian. Just as he was about to display a light body movement technique, Zhong Shou suddenly frowned. With a thought, he caused Little Gold to turn into a thin layer and hide in his sleeves. He walked to the side of the tea table in the carriage and sat down. A few breaths later, he saw Xianyuan Iren, who had left crying that day, board his carriage. Zhong Shou originally thought that she was here to scold him, but when she came up, she looked at him with a complicated expression. Then, without making a sound, she placed a bottle of pills in front of him. Zhong Shou's brows furrowed, holding the bottle in his hand, asking curiously, "What is this?" "This is the psychic sense pill refined using the recipe you gave me. I added in spirit dew grass and Xian bamboo heart. It might not be as good as the original recipe you gave me, but I am confident that the effects won't be too bad. I have specially modified this bottle of pills to be used along with the Meridian Spirit pill. It might not be able to reduce the pain, but it can allow you to hold on for a longer time. You can also use the Meridian Spirit pill to train your soul power, which can be considered to be complementary." Xianyuan Iren explained tiredly, her expression haggard. Her eyes were red like cherries. It was obvious that after she went back, she cried for a long time. So that's the case. Zhong Shoxin felt warmth in his heart, but his expression didn't change. After nodding his head, he opened the cork. His fiancée was indeed rich and overbearing. There were 100 of the so-called psychic sense pills. Just the ingredients used to flour them were worth a lot. To refine such pills, normal silver charcoal was useless, and one had to use the rarer coal essence. Delighted, Zhong Shou didn't hesitate to keep the bottle of pills. He knew that he had found the 3 true spiritual talismans he needed to form when he reached the out-of-body realm. Following which, he felt a headache. Thinking about it, if he wanted Xianyuan Iran to know the use of the chill spirit sense pill, he had to reveal a little more and specially remind her. His eyes flashing, Zhong Shou's brows furrowed. Your psychic sense pill looks decent. However, isn't it neglecting the essentials? Does this pill have the effect of freezing the soul? In the past, I read a medicine book that said that the ice blue grass can lower the heart fire and calm the mind. That snow stem seed can also lower the heart fire and clear the liver and lungs. Your pill shouldn't be much weaker than the chill spirit sense pill. Xianyuan Iran was furious and a little unhappy. She was really calm and stable, and no matter how annoyed she was, she wouldn't get angry so easily. However, she couldn't allow others to doubt her pill refining skills. That psychic sense pill was a pill that she specially made for Zhong Shou, so how could its effects be bad? Following which she had an idea, her eyes filled with excitement as she grabbed Zhong Shou's hand, asking anxiously, "You said that the ice blue grass can lower the heart fire and calm the mind. Snow stem seed can also lower the heart fire and clear the liver and lungs. Is that true? Which medicine book did it come from?" Zhong Shou only felt like his wrist was being clamped by an iron clamp, feeling a slight pain. He knew that this girl had lost her mind. Wasn't her strength above 10,000 kilograms? It was enough to crush a grade 2 monster to death. Luckily, he had some success in refining his bones, which was why he wasn't crushed. His brows furrowed before relaxing. Zhong Shou still smiled. "I don't remember which medicine book. Gantian Mountain has many books, and Linhai College has 3 large book repositories. Who would remember which one it is? Wouldn't Miss Iran know if you try?" Xianyuan Iran was startled, looking a little lost as she retracted her hand. Only after a short while did she regain her calmness. Thinking back to the needle holes on her body a day ago, she couldn't help but look over carefully with a weird expression on her face. Zhong Shou felt weak under her gaze. His eyelids couldn't help but twitch. He was thinking in his heart, did this girl finally notice how special he was? As expected, this bright pearl of his couldn't hide the light of the world. Even such a stupid and simple-minded girl could sense it. Just as he was looking forward to it, he heard Xianyuan Iran say gratefully, "Is the prince good at acupuncture?" To be able to know about the Meridian Spirit Pill and Chill Spirit Mysterious Sense Pill recipes, as well as the effects of the ice blue grass and snow stem seed, you are most probably good at medicine. As they say, a long illness becomes a doctor. I think the prince has thought of numerous methods for your dual meridian body. The one who saved me yesterday was the prince, right? I misunderstood you. Zhong Shou was stunned on the spot once more, smiling bitterly in his heart, speechless once more. A moment later he gave out a self-mocking laugh. Forget it, at least she didn't mistake him for a pervert. At this moment Xianyuan Iran's tone changed, however, although the prince was in a hurry. After all, I have a pure body. Now that things have reached such a stage, when is the prince prepared to ask for my parents' hand in marriage? As soon as she finished speaking, her starry eyes stared at him again. She was serious and nervous at the same time. Zhong Shou looked at her in shock, opening his mouth several times to speak but swallowing it back down. Looking into her eyes, he really couldn't bring himself to say that he wanted to cancel the marriage. Just as he was feeling depressed, why did he feel more and more like he was a heartless person who abandoned her? Just as he didn't know how to reply, he heard Chu Shui shout from outside, "Young master, there is a huge fog here. Uncle Lian has been driving around for a long time and can't get out. It seems like we are lost." Zhong Shou felt like he had been pardoned as he hurriedly ran out of the carriage. When he rushed to the shaft of the carriage, he saw a huge patch of fog spreading in front of him. It was like he was within the cloud ocean, unable to see 300 feet away. Luckily, Xianyuan Iran's carriage was still following closely behind, and they didn't get separated. However, Li Yunyang didn't dare to let the Windrider foals gallop around, sitting behind the shaft and carefully driving the carriage. Zhong Shou looked around, not knowing where this place was. He only knew that it was a really wide area and the terrain was really flat. The two carriages sped around without any bump. How can we get lost in a flat area? Zhong Shou's brows furrowed, filled with doubt. Lian Fan was a Xiantian master, be it spiritual sense or direction, he was much better than normal people. Even if there was a huge fog here, he could at least see 600 feet out and wasn't affected. Moreover, they were going straight west and didn't need to make any turns, so how could they get lost? Following which, Zhong Shou looked up at the sky. A moment later, a sharp expression appeared in his eyes. These few days the sky is really dry, and this fog doesn't seem to be formed normally. It also covers a huge area, at least 100 miles. If it isn't the power of a spiritual formation, then it is summoned by a spell. Could it be that someone wants to harm me? Chapter 129. The moment such a thought rose, Zhong Shou shook his head. If there was a formation here, then it was okay. If it was a spell, this person would definitely be above the day-wandering realm. Any spell could easily take his life, so why go through so much trouble? The key was that he couldn't sense any signs of large amounts of spiritual energy circulating around, which was why it wasn't a spiritual formation. At least Zhong Shou couldn't sense it now. Xianyuan Iran followed behind him, and came to the front of the carriage. Looking around, her brows were tightly furrowed. When she rushed over from the back, the surrounding was already covered in thick fog, so she didn't think too much about it. Only now did she realize that the situation wasn't right. After thinking about it, she didn't dare to agree. Uncle Lian, did you make a mistake? Didn't we keep going forward? How did we get lost? I remember that the fog rose less than 30 minutes ago, so how did it happen so quickly? Miss Xianyuan, Lian Fan, never lie. Lian Fan's expression was solemn as he pointed at the front of the carriage. Look at these Windrider foals. They look like they are going straight, but they are actually deviating. Apart from the fog being a little off, there should be some other illusionary technique to bewitch our mind. Just now, we probably went around the same spot, so we don't know which direction the carriage is heading in. Due to my ancestor's special bloodline, I was able to sense it early on. Xianyuan Iran was shocked. Looking carefully, the situation was exactly as Lian Fan had said. Her expression froze as she looked around in deep thought. Zhong Shou looked around for a moment, suddenly smiling and sitting down. Uncle Lian, you can stop. It seems like there is an expert casting a spell here. Since that person isn't willing to let us go, there is no point in continuing. Why don't we rest and let the horses gather some strength? Since the day he was sent over by Lian Qing to be a horse driver, Lian Fan had always listened carefully to Zhong Shou's orders. At this moment, after the battle yesterday, he was even more convinced of Zhong Shou's strength and followed his orders like they were Buddhist scriptures. When he heard that, he didn't hesitate and waved his whip, stopping all the Windrider foals. Xianyuan Iran looked at Zhong Shou unhappily, as if blaming him for acting on his own, but she didn't refute him. This wait lasted for a full 4 hours. Zhong Shou actually calmly fell asleep. Seeing that the sky was getting dark, the fog still showed no signs of dissipating. Xianyuan Iran's eyes gradually became anxious. He rose into the air and stood at the top of the carriage. He clasped his hands and said, I wonder which senior is doing this? Pill Fountain Sect Junior Disciple Xianyuan Iran greets you. Senior, please be kind and let us leave. His voice was imbued with the power of true qi and was transmitted 10 miles away. They could faintly hear the reverberations of the surrounding area. However, even after an hour had passed, there was still no response. Naturally, the fog showed no signs of dissipating. Zhong-shou came back to his senses and laughed when he saw the situation. Although he didn't know what the goal of the person who created this fog was, he didn't know. Although he didn't know who the person was, he could confirm that this person didn't have any killing intent towards him. If he really wanted to harm him, these few hours were enough for him to use many methods. Xianyuan Iren seemed to have seen through it. After taking in a deep breath, she sighed helplessly. Prince, the fog here shouldn't be targeting us. However, we can't continue to wait like this. Yunyang and I will take a look around. If there is any danger, we can use this fire talisman to warn us. This talisman was specially made by our pill fountain sect. Even in this fog, we can see it. A faint golden talisman flew out from Xianyuan Iren's hand. She seemed to think that Zhong-shou couldn't use it, as she directly slapped it in front of Chu Shui. Following which, a few golden needles and 40 over grade 2 beast crystals were placed around the carriage. Zhong-shou casually took a look and knew that this was a spiritual formation to differentiate one's location. As for those golden needles, they were something that Xianyuan Iren often used, and had her aura and spiritual sense. Under the buff of the spiritual formation, even from tens of miles away, one could sense and differentiate. The entire spiritual formation was really simple, but it was ingenious. Squinting his eyes, Zhong-shou didn't care at all. Looking on as Xianyuan Iren and Li Yunyang left, he smiled and stood up, stretching his waist. This nap is more or less full. How comfortable. Shui, why don't we go out and take a walk? Chu Shui exclaimed, looking in the direction that Xianyuan Iren left in. But young master, didn't Miss Iren ask us to wait for her here? You are my brat, Zhong-shou. Do you listen to me or her? Zhong-shou grinned, jumping off the carriage and activating the lightning traveling spirit bone. With a crackling sound, he walked forwards like a wooden puppet. His brows rose up coldly, his hand pressing on the lightning-toothed sword. His violent intent was hidden as he smiled, since that person has already arranged such a huge formation for your young master. If the main character doesn't arrive, how can it end? Chu Shui didn't really understand, but she didn't hesitate, jumping off the carriage and following Zhong-shou in a daze. Lien Fan also wisely abandoned the Windrider foals and the cloud-crossing carriage, and followed closely behind. Zhong-shou was also aimless, not distinguishing between the directions, just moving forwards based on his feelings. Suddenly, it went east and then turned south. Seeing this, the two people behind exchanged glances with one another. Weirdly speaking, just as Chu Shui was thinking that her young master was dumb, if he continued on like this, when would he reach the end? A ball of light suddenly entered the eyes of the three of them. Following the light, they saw that this place was the shore of a small stream. On both sides of the stream was a large patch of green land with willows swaying. The water in the stream gave out tinkling sounds like celestial music. Weirdly speaking, this place was covered in fog, making it hard for people to see clearly. However, there wasn't a single bit of fog on this side of the stream, making it look like a celestial realm. Under the willows, two people could be seen sitting cross-legged. A male and a female. The male was around 70 years old, wearing a linen Confucian robe. He had white hair and a white beard, giving off a celestial aura, like a celestial being. The female was around 17 or 18 years old, a lightning mark appearing and disappearing at the center of her brows. She was extremely beautiful, making one unable to help but take a few more glances. Her aura wasn't that of an otherworldly being, but one that gave off a devilish charm. Behind the two of them stood two other people, both of whom he was familiar with. One of them was Lei Dong, the other was Zhao Yanran. When he looked at Zhong-shou, the latter's eyes gave off a weird glow as he looked over. Lei Dong, on the other hand, smiled embarrassedly at him and winked at him. The reactions of the two of them were different. Their expressions changed slightly, like they were a little disappointed, but also a little hopeful. Zhong Shou was startled, looking at the old man and the young girl in shock. After thinking about it for a moment, he vaguely guessed what was going on. He stared viciously at Lei Dong before walking over, bowing towards the two of them. Zhong Shou greets the two seniors. May I ask for your names? Is the fog here caused by the two of you? Can you be magnanimous and let Zhong Shou and the others leave? The young girl with the lightning mark at the center of her brows didn't speak, her blue eyes sizing up Zhong Shou's body. Her gaze was like she was looking at a lover, suddenly smiling, suddenly frowning, who knows what she was thinking about. The old man was the same. A moment later he smiled and said, I am Yan Fan, Lei Dong's uncle, in charge of Wujue Villa. I know that you and Lei Dong are sworn brothers. In the future you can just call me Uncle Lei. Before his words landed, the young girl scoffed coldly, Don't try to pull connections. He and your nephew have only known each other for a day. How can such a brother count? Yan Fan smiled, nodding towards the young girl. You recognize the two behind. As for this one, don't look at how young she is. She is famous in the cloud world. Coming from Tsang Xingdao Taiyuan sect, known as Taiyuan Fairy, her name is Shui Lingbo. Normal spiritual grandmasters would have to avoid him. When Chu Shui heard that, she didn't feel anything. However, Zhong Shou and Lian Fan couldn't help but shudder. The latter had only heard of the names of these two sects, while Zhong Shou was truly shocked. Wujue Villa, this was another shrine sect, ranked 5th out of the 10 shrines. As for Taiyuan sect, they were a little stronger, one of the 3 pillars of Tsang Xingdao. At the same time, they controlled the 3rd and 7th shrines. Their strength was several times stronger than Lingyun sect. Compared to spiritual houses and sects, their strength was like heaven and earth. However, what truly shocked him were the two people in front of him. They were the first batch of people to enter the celestial realm after the spiritual wave. In his last life, in the God Emperor game, these two people were at a level that players couldn't reach. Once a martial cultivator or spirit master reached the celestial realm, their lifespan could reach 3,000 years. In his era, many people guessed that the two of them were still alive, but no one knew where they went. Zhong Shou took in a deep breath, forcing himself to calm down. His expression was calm as he bowed slightly towards the two of them. Although the identities of these two people were shocking, he didn't have anything he wanted, so naturally, he didn't need to suck up to them. That Yan Fan smiled when he saw the situation. Looking at you, you should have heard of Taiyuan Fairy and my name. The two of us are people who live in seclusion and don't have much fame. For the prince to know about us, you must have learned from your family. He waved his sleeves and pointed at the chessboard between him and Shui Lingbo, saying expressionlessly, Prince, don't blame us. The fog this time was caused by something else, and it isn't something that the two of us can make things difficult for. However, not long ago, Taiyuan Fairy and I were discussing the cloud-shocking god-destroying sword technique of Lingyun sect. We had different opinions on some areas and couldn't agree. This was why the fog was stirred up. When Chu Shui heard that, she immediately looked towards the chessboard, only to see that the chessboard made of sandalwood was filled with black and white pieces. It wasn't much different from normal tools. She couldn't help but feel weird. What did discussing the sword technique have to do with playing chess? Could it be that this fog was caused by this game of Go? That was just too unbelievable. Zhong Shou laughed coldly. As expected, in the next moment, that Yan Fan smiled as he looked over. I heard Lei Dong say that you helped him comprehend the mountain and river knife intent. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.